There we go. That feels appropriate. Well, welcome to the stream, Tim. I've got the invite out to Sam. I'm sure he'll be joining us eventually. But I figured, why not get started, and we can go ahead and talk through how we got here. I was actually thinking about reading your comments, but since you're here, I figured why not go ahead and let you just kind of speak for yourself, and we'll just kind of talk through it and until Sam gets here.
Okay, well, I don't remember everything I said in my comments there because I was actually just going through, I think the first 15 or 20 minutes of that debate. And
Sure.
I was like, okay, this is getting overwhelmingly, and I'm going to make just pages of text to combat everything that we said. And so but there's a trend that I see with, I don't know what the correct term would be, detractors or haters or people who, and it's inconsistent criticism and criticism that they apply to Eric and his comics that they would not apply to other forms of media. So when Sam gets here, I'm going to try to point out that hypocrisy to him. And okay, all of these things that you say make Isom a terrible comic book or a terrible, terribly written or terrible, the quality's horrible or whatever it is he's claiming.
Right.
I was would you apply that to other forms of media? Would you apply that to, name your favorite franchise, and you're willing to overlook the flaws there, but you're oh, this staircase in Isom that makes the whole comic unreadable. It's what?
Right.
Who does that? It's only people who they're looking for everything to hate about the comic.
Okay. So, all right. Well, Sam is backstage, so I'll go ahead and bring him in here. So, welcome, Sam.
Am I on?
You are on. Yes, you are on. And all right, so I went ahead and pulled up your comments here, and I'll bring up just so kind of how we got here. So Tim, you said you kind of did a bullet point for like you said, first 15, 30 minutes into the debate because there was a lot and you didn't want to just put a book in there. But on point one, you brought up the art, and you're not going to say that it's. You didn't claim it was flawless, but you said that saying that it was static, you said was an absurd claim. You said that the security guard having a hole punched into him, you think that was a bad argument. In point three, you brought up that Avery started the fight and he's not the good guy, but then you use the example of Batman starting fights and how he's a good guy. You said in point four that it was Sam said it was jarring to go from fighting a gang to taking on demons in Isom 2, but you brought up how that was foreshadowed in Isom 1. Mm-hmm. And then point five is the silhouette panel in Isom 2. You said you've used that multiple times, so you thought that was kind of weird.
I've never used it, but
it used. Seen it. I'm sorry. That's what that's what I meant there. And then on point six, you said that the introduction of Larry Shungite, that was I think that you're kind of bringing up that's what professional wrestlers do. So that's not really weird that that's what he was behaving that way, or that's how he was introduced, and that you thought that was kind of part of the world building. So those were the first 6 points, and you and I talked very cordially about everything, and that's how we set up the discussion here tonight. So just kind of to go over those points, and that's all pretty accurate to how you still feel, right?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So I guess I don't really have a whole lot to do here other than I'll be in the chat if we get any chatters. We've got 3 people watching right now, which is pretty cool. But if anyone has any comments or anything, I'll be able to address those. I don't expect that I'm going to need to really do much moderating. The only thing that I would ask you guys are to obey the YouTube rules, of course. So no gamer words, and other than that, you guys can go ham. But other than that, just as I guess give a brief introduction of who you guys are. Tim, I know that you've done some YouTube stuff in the past, but right now you told me you're not really shilling anything. You're not really doing anything specific. Nope. So if you want to, bring up anything, or if that's still the case, you can mention that. Sam, I know that you're writing comic books. So you guys, Tim, you go first, and then Sam, just kind of introduce yourselves. And then after that, you can jump right in.
Yeah. Like you said, I'm not shilling anything. I don't have much of a social media following. My Twitter was suspended
somehow
shortly after you contacted me about this debate. And
yeah, we had to switch to Discord.
Suspicious.
No, it's not it's
there?
suspicious on Elon Musk's end because it's definitely a technical glitch on their end, and their system offers me no way to contact anybody.
They're targeting you because you tell the truth.
No, it's because they over rely on automated systems and not having actual people oversee their system. But I'm guessing it has something to do with previously being banned, and I know that sounds ridiculous. I was banned for quoting George Carlin's 7 words you can't say on TV in a debate with somebody where I was talking about how Taylor Swift's The Man was transphobic, and this person was defending Taylor Swift, and swear words were used, and I'm like, okay, if you're going to swear,
whip out the car.
You're going to swear, I'm going to swear, and when I swore, they said, hey, don't swear at me, and I'm like, well, that's not against Twitter's terms of service, and I'm just going to quote George Carlin at you, and then my account was subsequently banned. And I've got so I've got a YouTube channel, and I have it documented where I did a stream showing the emails from Twitter at the time and the screenshots, and what they said was violating their terms of service. And I'm like, swearing has never been against their terms of service. This is a complete,
This is a long ass intro.
Yeah.
Well,
sorry,
that's all right. We got as much time as you guys want. So
yeah, so banned off of Twitter, and then I had a YouTube channel that where I was doing regular streams, but that was 3 years ago, and I haven't done anything since. So nothing. But
fair enough. Sorry about you getting banned, but I mean, I've never been banned. Wink. I've never avoided a ban ever. But you can go ahead and introduce yourself, Sam.
I'm a middle-aged Indian tech scammer.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, I thought you were black.
Oh, I'm that too. I'm black and Indian.
Okay.
I thought you were Larry Shungite.
Yeah, was Larry Shungite black? He's not black.
Actually,
he's a mayo monkey.
This is true. Unironically, Sam started the Larry Shungite hashtag. That's absolutely correct.
That is true. I'm the first one who used it, and then Eric started using it.
It's now become an actual thing. So I don't know how, but Sam has memed 2 things into reality. What's your favorite part of Isom was the first one. The second one,
no, 3. I was the first one who noticed somewhere near Florida. Oh. I was the first one who noticed that. I'm shocked. No one else noticed somewhere near Florida.
So meme magic is real, and Sam is a source.
Tim, where do you think that is? Where do you think somewhere near Florida is?
Well, if you actually pay attention to the comic, they describe that when XSEPs became a thing in this universe, there was some type of civil war, and the United States was broken up into various countries. So somewhere near Florida, we don't have an exact map.
You think they sunk the US Florida? Do you think they sunk Florida? They capsized?
What makes the most sense is there are specific states or territories that became new countries. Like Texas is described as a country, and I know people's try to make fun of that. The country of Texas, like, oh, they don't know it's a state. It's like, well, this is not our universe. This is not our Earth. There are people flying around with superpowers. Texas is no longer a state. Texas is its own country. It may not look the same as our current Texas. Maybe it's Texas plus Arizona and Mexico. And
did you think maybe
who knows how big that territory is?
That like the map or something at the beginning.
Eventually, we'll get there, but maybe they don't have that map.
I mean, that's so easy to put in the police station at the beginning. Yeah, like a map. It
would be easy, but maybe
a town hall.
It's very likely that
Tim, I'm talking. Yeah. I had to go to a town hall in Texas recently, and they had old historical maps of Texas and the historical borders. They could have shoved that into the police station at the very beginning and been like, Republic of Texas, here's the borders, here's the map.
Yeah.
That's like environmental storytelling right there. That's how you show and not tell. But now people, they're not even shown that Texas is an independent country. They're just told offhand in weird, vague terms.
No, you're supposed to piece that together for yourself.
World building. No, you're not. That's bad world building. You shouldn't. Okay, it shouldn't just be like an offhand.
Pointed out for you, it's bad world building.
Well, what I suggested was exactly not explicitly saying it, but
okay. So in Star Wars, where's Alderaan in comparison to Tatooine? What's the Do they ever show you a map of how far away those are from
They
each
act,
other?
I think in episode 2 they actually do. Yeah, remember when
Episode
Obi-Wan's
2.
looking at
So
the...
long after they've already talked about these two.
But that's also
planets.
we're talking about space where everything else is fictional.
Yeah, but
In a
it's still
comic book
bad.
world,
So
you kind of assume
bad
that
world
it's
building.
close to the world that you're
No,
in, like
they're
Marvel and
described.
DC. You still have the United States and Marvel and DC.
Okay, so they described 2 geographic locations. I mean, in this case, they're entire planets, but they don't map them out for you, so that's bad storytelling.
Well, they're in space. Yeah, see how that's a bit different.
Okay.
But they're also fictional.
So
Florida is not fictional. We all have a frame of reference for Florida. We don't have a frame of reference for Tatooine or Alderaan because they're fake. Do you not see the big difference there?
I do see a difference. I don't see a meaningful difference because you're
you're
talking about, even though Florida is a real world place, DC Universe exists in planet Earth, but they talk about Metropolis, which is not a real place. And to the best of my knowledge, when Superman is introduced and they show Metropolis, there's no map of Metropolis as far as pointing out where Metropolis is as compared to any other city within the United States. So that's bad storytelling.
Well, no, because Metropolis is fictional. It's clearly like a stand-in for New York, but
So
Florida is not. Do you not see what I mean?
It's a
like the meme
version.
Of somewhere in Florida or somewhere near Florida is that it's such a like vague, ambiguous thing.
Yeah.
To be near a state, why wouldn't it just say the state it's in or somewhere in Florida? No one would have batted an eye.
Because we don't know what happened after the fallout of the supposed Civil War. So maybe Texas was a territory, Florida is a territory, but maybe there are outskirts and these are unclaimed territories or disputed territories that don't have
just having a concert, like a normal concert and a disputed territory.
Yeah.
Yeah,
there are areas that are in conflict right now where some people
much higher likelihood that Eric just couldn't decide where to put it, so he said something vague like somewhere near Florida.
That's very much a possibility, which is what I was trying to say before, but you kind of went on your diatribe saying they need to have a map, otherwise this whole world building is... You said they needed to.
Jared, did I say they needed to, or did I say that would have been a good idea?
I'll be honest with you. I was trying to retweet this to get more viewers. So I'm not sure.
Well,
so, okay. Let me phrase it this way: if they didn't give you a map of what the United States looks like and how each territory is outlined, or sorry, what is the remainder of the United States, because they wouldn't be the United States anymore, but the current geography, if they didn't put that map out in the police station, that would be an act of bad world building. That was according to you.
Well, I just gave the map as an example of something they could have done to give the reader more context.
So could have done, either deliberately chose not to, or weren't able to do because maybe they haven't mapped out how everything actually is.
You forgot the other option, or incompetence and bad writing. It seems that you're like unwilling to accept that these could be failings of writings. Why is that?
Because there aren't indications of bad writing as you claim, because I'm mentioning other examples of forms of entertainment where you wouldn't declare that as bad writing. And I mentioned Alderaan and Tatooine.
And I already said it's different because the context that we're presented them in, we don't have a frame of reference for Tatooine or Alderaan in the first place. Everyone, presumably in America, has a frame of reference for where Florida is, except maybe Eric. Maybe he doesn't know.
Okay.
And I know he knows where Memphis and Dallas Fort Worth is. I know that.
Yeah. Eric doesn't know how to read a map because he's black. Okay, we understand.
No, seriously.
He talks about living in Dallas Fort Worth and he went to college in Memphis.
Well, I'm black too.
No,
I can't read a map.
No, this is a common occurrence. So sorry if I'm over stereotyping or oversimplifying.
This is so funny.
No, this is a common.
I can't
every
believe
time
you just
somebody
said black people can't read maps. That's racist, bro.
It may have been an oversimplification of your position, but these are not claims that you would make about somebody else other than Eric. And I don't see.
They absolutely are. Anybody who wrote that, if that was a different author, if that was in like a Marvel or DC title, I would say the same thing.
that's what you claim.
Let me rewind just a second, because you're making a claim that he would, and this is, to my knowledge, is the first time you guys have talked. So you're assuming that he would not make this judgment about anyone else, but what leads you to believe that about Sam specifically?
It's not just Sam specifically. It's all the people who are making these similar arguments, and they all seem to make the exact same arguments, and they all seem to make the exact same incorrect statements about the books, what's in the books and what isn't in the books. And it seems like they're all reading from the same similar script. And the reason I brought up you must think that he can't read a map because he's black. Sorry, what?
You said they all seem to be reading from like the same similar script. Do you think this is like a coordinated thing?
No, I think it's somebody in their group presents something and they all take that and run with it as if it's fact. They don't go to the original source to double check. They just rely on the authority of their comrade.
But I've read it. I've read the book Isom 1 and 2 multiple times, and Alpha 4 once.
So you're not saying that it's coordinated in the sense that like Sam is in a secret server with like Dick and Vito and everybody, but you're saying that it comes like there's a the Vito file. You're saying that it comes from a source and then it trickles down through people just hearing it and running with it rather than verifying it, is what you're saying?
Yeah, it's an echo chamber, and we see this all the time with the news where CNN will report something and then MSNBC will report on what CNN just reported. And they don't bother to go to the original source. And now they're quoting a false claim and it gets circulated around and everybody's making the exact same false claim because some other source that they rely on started it. So it's not a coordinated effort. It's what's the word I'm looking for?
It's kind of serendipitous. Conspiracy is not the right word, but it's kind of a serendipitous coincidence.
It is a coincidence, but it's more the laziness of the individuals to fact check people that they trust.
Okay, but I don't see how that's relevant to me at all.
So that may not be the
books, and I form my opinions based on what I read.
All right, so it may not be the case with you, but the fact that you say that Eric doesn't know where Florida is on a map.
Well, I mean,
you said it as a jest, but the implication is he's too stupid to understand where Florida is or how to read a map.
And the implication is he's a bad writer. But then you also implied that I said that because he's black, which I find very funny.
Well, I think it's pretty common with all the people that I've interacted regarding this, or all the videos I've seen with the negative reviews. They seem to imply, they consistently talk about Eric's intelligence or the lack thereof. And I'm like, well, why do they keep bringing this up? And what has he done that has shown that he is not intelligent when everything I've seen from him, when he talks about anarcho-capitalism and he's quoting from Hans Hoppe and when he's quoting Mises and he is quoting, I'm drawing a blank on the other names here.
Sowell.
When he's quoting from famous libertarian, well, he does quote from Thomas Sowell, but Thomas Sowell is not a libertarian or an anarcho-capitalist.
I feel like we're getting too in the weeds.
But when he's quoting from those guys verbatim and he's talking about anarcho-capitalism, he is dead on. He makes
wait. So you just said when he's quoting from someone verbatim. So that wouldn't be Eric's intelligence. I mean, anybody can just recite something someone says. So if I quote from a smart guy verbatim, I would sound smart as well.
When you can recall that without messing it up, which that is a sign of intelligence. You're just, I'm talking about a subject. Here's a quote that goes along with that ties in and personifies exactly the point I'm trying to make. And then you expand on that or explain that. And he goes off. He has like several videos that are 20, 30 minutes long where he's not reading off of the script. He is saying this on the fly, either sometimes in response to something or even in streams. And he can just rattle this off at the top of his head. How is that a sign of him being?
I don't care. I mean, I didn't watch Eric July videos. I actually didn't really know who he was before Isom. Everyone was talking about Isom, so I just read it to see what everyone was talking about.
Okay.
And from reading it, he seems stupid. And from any time that I've seen him talk about it post reading it. I don't watch his political commentary.
Okay.
He seemed stupid, and so that's why I made the joke.
So
You-
you never
you not
heard
see
any of
that?
the music from Backwards, which is actually really well done. As far as lyrics
I
go.
did recently, a couple days ago. I looked up backward. I think it's because I was looking back through Isom 1. And I saw the ad, and
Okay.
I listened to him do like this screamo music, and I laughed my ass off
Okay.
because I just didn't expect Eric to be like in a metal band. It was
Yeah.
it's
unexpected.
Now, lyrically, all the videos have the lyrics at the bottom, either in the description or
Yeah,
a lot
I
of them
didn't
have the
read that.
lyrics
I
going
just kinda
across.
laughed
like-
at the screaming.
Okay. So, music aside, the lyrics are written by Eric.
You seem like
He
a
also-
really big like Eric fanboy here. And the thing is, I'm not. This really isn't about Eric. This is about like Isom and whether or not it's
Well-
well written. And you've kind of gone off on a lot of tangents here from your original
Because-
criticism of what I
because
said
you're-
about Isom. And it's like, yeah, you're saying all this shit about Eric, but that doesn't matter to me. I don't have that context.
Okay.
I don't watch Eric, and that doesn't inform any of my
Yeah.
opinions on the book.
So you don't have the context that prove that he is not a stupid man.
I don't think it
Well,
proves.
let's
I think it's like a-
let's
I mean,
let's put a
something
pause on
sad.
that because
So someone who is stupid would not be capable of doing the things that Eric has done.
let's say that he's a genius and he's brilliant. Let's just
I'm not
It would
focus
doing
still
on.
be a bad writer.
Well, no, I mean I'm not even being disingenuous. Like whether he's smart or brilliant, actually, Sam's kind of the point I was going to make. You can be brilliant and be bad at writing, or you can be
Yes.
stupid like me and be probably also bad at writing. But you
No, you're not
can, there's
bad.
but there's some overlap in different areas and everything. So dealing specifically with Isom and not Eric or anyone's opinion of Eric as a person or his intellect. Specifically speaking of the Isom and originally when we were talking to Alvin, we it kind of went into art, but we were kind of originally wanting to focus on like storytelling. So like from like a writing perspective, and don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to tell you guys what you can and can't talk about, but like you can go into the art, but like specifically as far as the writing goes, Tim, you feel like I think that you said that it would be correct me if I'm wrong, but I think you said that it's at least a 6 out of 10 now, and it may have been a lower score back in the golden age of comics when comics were better, but compared to stuff now, it's at least a 6 out of 10. So just kind of talking about the quality of the book and the writing and everything like that, you feel like it's a mismaligned perhaps, or do you kind of expand on that a bit more and go more into that topic?
Yeah. So I think I don't remember saying a 6 out of 10.
Maybe we were talking about Alpha Core. Forgive me if I got that wrong.
No,
What
maybe
would
I'm
you rate
thinking.
Isom?
So I believe I originally gave it a score of a 7.5 out of 10.
Okay.
So my overall point is it's better than the average. It's a C student, maybe a B, but it's not like the best thing ever. But in order for it to be bad, that I'm thinking it has to be at least a failure. And all these people are saying it's terrible. It's it's a horrible comic. There's no
plot
concern for quality. There's no plot, which doesn't make any sense whatsoever to me. What do you mean there's no plot? There's an obvious plot. You may just not like the plot, but it is there.
I think people say no plot when the plot seems to go off the rails and becomes less what it was originally about. Okay. So if you start with the plot about Jasmine and then you swerve into Hell Monkeys, people are going to say there's no plot because they're talking about consistency there.
So would you say that the Lord of the Rings has no plot? The Fellowship of the Ring, the first book in the series.
You mean the very decided plot of let's get the ring to Mordor,
whoa.
And throw into Mount
What do you mean very decided plot? What about Tom Bombadil?
Are we talking about the slight difference in the books where it's not even in the movies?
It's a complete detour from it's a complete detour from the main purpose of the story. The story was to get the ring to Mordor. Well, actually, to get the ring to Rivendell in book 1, and then eventually to go to Mordor. But there's an entire, and I believe it's it's at least one chapter. It might be multiple chapters where they get sidetracked by the Tom Bombadil. And there's also a section where they go into a crypt where they are attacked by ghosts, and it's like all that has nothing to do with the journey with the ring.
In Ghosts or
The battle for Helm's Deep has nothing to do with going to Mordor. Pippin.
Well, no, it's all about the journey to get to Mordor and backing up Frodo and Sam.
So there are side.
That's different. No, but you don't understand. For one, if we're looking at the Fellowship of the Ring, that would be Isom number 1, because we're talking about Isom. Isom's the 3-issue story arc. At the end of Isom, it's not even about Jasmine anymore. We don't even know Avery's clear goal other than like vague get at Darren. At the end of Fellowship of the Ring, you have the concrete goal of Frodo and Sam going to destroy the ring in Mount Doom. And then all the actions of the other characters are all about backing up Frodo and Sam going to Mount Doom.
But after
even the Battle of Helm's Deep is about that ultimately. Like, you can have roadblocks and you can have, that's the journey. The journey isn't just point A to point B. It's the fact that they have an end goal. What's the end goal of Isom? Avery doesn't have an end goal.
So Tolkien can have things that sidetrack the characters or split the parties or make them focus on different things. But Eric can't. He can't have something come along that detracts them from their primary mission or has them detour, because Frodo originally wasn't going to split off from the group.
What's Avery's primary mission, Tim? What's Avery's primary mission?
For this arc, it's to figure out what is going on with Jasmine and either rescue her from that.
He literally said he doesn't care and it's not about Jasmine anymore at the end of Isom number 1. So I don't know where you're getting from.
He didn't say that. He said,
yes, he goes, this isn't about Jasmine anymore. Let me pull it up so I can see the exact page.
So that means he doesn't care about her at all, and his only new motivation is just because he was disrespected. That's not my reading of it.
This is what he says. Let's see. I think it's when he's hopping around. Jared, do you remember when it said?
Not offhand, but I've got my copy here.
Yeah.
So this is in book 1, right?
It's in book 1, yeah. I mean, because remember, Avery doesn't even mention the name Jasmine in book 2. Jasmine's mentioned once in book. That's like if you had the ring. It's like if the ring was only mentioned once in the Two Towers. Let's see. Is it earlier than that?
Well, this isn't an answer to the question, but I literally turned to the page where he's talking to that guy outside, and shakes his hand from his truck.
Oh yeah, shakes his hand.
He says Jasmine could be Darren's assistant. She could be doing other kind of work. I'm acting fake concerned. I really just want to punch him in his mouth. Darren's arrogant enough to write me off, or is he? So let me. It happened to be related to Jasmine, but let me continue looking for what we're referencing here.
Yeah.
He does kind of continue talking about that in the next couple of pages. There's a brief cutaway to Michael and the girl with the purple hair. Lillian. I think it's Lillian. My sense of pride is just about the only thing carrying me through. I know this is ill-advised, but this has always been me. When you plan, prep for the absolute worst, and when you don't have a plan, make it up along the way.
Yeah.
Then he runs into Jasmine.
Right. I found it.
Okay, you found it. Okay, good.
Yeah, it's when he meets with Altona, and he goes, "I need to regroup. This is no longer a Jasmine problem.
Okay.
Tell Mrs. Newman she's alive." And then they briefly look over the security footage of Jasmine, and then she's not mentioned again after that. And then until the next issue, when she's very, very briefly mentioned by Darren. But like, do you not see how that's not a consistent plot thread? That's not like the end goal of Avery. So I'm asking you, what's the end goal of Avery? Because you use Tolkien as an example, and I told you there's a very concrete end goal by the end of Fellowship of the Ring. I mean, by the middle of Fellowship of the Ring. And that's carried through the entire trilogy. So if we're applying the same thing, because you brought up Tolkien, What's it for Avery?
It's still the same.
No,
I
it's
don't see
not.
how any.
He just said he doesn't. It's no longer a Jasmine problem.
Where, like, I'm looking for that no longer a Jasmine problem.
Yes, it's when he meets with Altona. He goes, "I need to regroup. This is no longer a Jasmine problem. Tell Mrs. Newman she's alive."
Okay, because that was the original concern, is she wasn't seen. He's like, okay, she's alive, but there's more to this, right?
This is no longer a Jasmine problem.
Yeah, because there's something
this
more
also
at work.
comes after he's like, "I don't even care. I'm just going in here because Darren disrespected me." He very clearly doesn't give a shit about Jasmine. He doesn't think about her in the narration boxes of the next comic. I don't see how you can make that argument.
So she is the instigating factor, but at this point, he doesn't really care, right? He's like, okay, she's alive. And as far as he can tell, she's there of her own accord, or at least that's what it's, unless she's under duress, and that maybe comes out later. But he says, okay, I'm investigating this, whether she is with them and in support of them or not. This is something bigger.
Did he say that I'm investigating this?
That's what's implied in what you just read.
This is no longer a Jasmine problem. But he doesn't really investigate it anymore. Well, that's not like a thing that he does. He's not like determined, I'm going to investigate.
I'm sorry if I missed this. Forgive me. What did you say he was investigating?
So, he is going to investigate
Darren
Fontaine. Yeah, Darren Fontaine.
Okay.
Or Fontano?
Fontano.
Yeah.
Is it Fontaine? Fontano? Who knows? Braxton.
Fontano.
Yara.
What's up, Mr. X? How's it going, buddy?
So yeah, Mr. X, that's exactly what I'm saying is, and that's what I got out of that, is he's saying, okay, Jasmine's still a factor here, but it's no longer just about her. If she's working with them, well, I'm taking down his organization and she's going to go down with it. If she's there, under duress, which is what seems to be implied, then he's going to take down Darren's organization and then he's going to rescue her. Now he gets to book 2, and that is his entire plan. That's when he's, not really suiting up, but he's pseudo suiting up because he doesn't have his new improved suit.
You mean when
he gets the gun and he's going to go on another go to
he's gonna shoot
Darren's club
That's
again.
what it sets up. That doesn't set up anything about Jasmine.
And then he gets sidetracked because Sam's wife comes to his door and he's like, I was just about to go to Darren's club. Now I got to deal with this. And then that sets off a whole nother chain of events that sidetrack him from that.
I have my book elsewhere. I mean, I can get it if I need to, but you guys may have read this more recently than I did.
Are you talking about the Isom 2?
Isom 2.
Yeah, he gets a call because
wasn't he going to go kill Darren? Like he gets a gun.
That's what
Darren pimp slapped.
His sister.
But that doesn't have to do with Jasmine.
It no longer has to do with Jasmine. She was just the instigating factor, and that's what he said in the book. The quote that you just said. It's bigger than her. It's no longer a Jasmine problem. So he's just
going to kill Darren because he interfered with his business and he went out. For one, too, Avery's a bad protagonist. I recently thought about this. He goes in there because he's disrespected. Even after he sees that Jasmine's okay, his job's done.
Have you never read a Luke Cage comic?
Beats the shit out of Santuan. For some reason now he's able to do it. There's no training. There's no learning from his mistake. He just now wins. And he endangers his whole family. He knowingly endangers his whole family.
Tim, you had a question. What was that question?
Okay, so I asked, have you ever read a Luke Cage comic?
No.
No, because that is a common theme with Luke Cage. So even though he is bulletproof, he's got Velcro skin because of his powers. He's basically...
Did you say Velcro?
Steve Rogers 2.0. Yeah.
So he can cling on to walls.
His cells have a Velcro interlace. They are stuck together to the point where
I was imagining he's all fuzzy because every time he rubs up against fabric, all the stuff comes off on the Velcro.
But Luke Cage was started at the time where blaxploitation films were pretty popular. He's kind of a blaxploitation character, but he is from the streets, similar
Have
to what
you
I
read
imagine.
Luke
I'm going to
Cage?
show every comment Mr. X makes because he's the
Okay.
main chat. He's the only one chatting right now.
Hi, Mr. X. He's your biggest fan.
He is my biggest fan. He loves you guys too.
Maybe you should super chat.
I wish he could. He
Ask some
can't.
questions.
I'm too
Okay.
small.
So,
Tim, have you ever read a Luke Cage comic?
yes.
Which one?
I don't know if they were the first ones, but they seemed like the first one because they described his the origination of his powers, and it's his first little adventure. But that was 20 plus years ago.
Oh wow. Okay.
Yeah,
So it's been a while.
yeah. No, his comics started out in like the 70s or later. But I read them. I don't know if they were the original run or if they were a
I've only
retelling
ever
of his
read
origin story.
Luke Cage in like team up books. Oh no, I'm wrong. I've read.
No.
I have read Luke Cage. I've read when he's paired up with Iron Fist for Heroes for Hire.
That's
never
where I
read it
first
solo.
heard about him. But I mean, I wasn't a real big fan of Iron Fist or Luke Cage, but I did read the Luke Cage series, and it was that was a while ago. But then when I watched the Marvel series, I'm like, oh, dude, this is exactly the type of thing that I would expect Luke Cage. Like,
I'm still like
yeah.
scrounging around for why this is relevant.
But it's because he's got that same attitude that Avery has. At first, he goes in because he's doing the right thing for someone as a favor to someone, but then it's like, okay, now these people aren't taking me seriously. This has become personal. Now it's between me and you, not you and this other person I was trying to save. It happens all the time.
Wow. Well, I
Luke
would
Cage.
still say that that's a poor protagonist.
Okay.
That doesn't affect whether or not I like. For one, the stories I've read with him, it's just like a buddy book with Iron Fist, where they get hired for stuff. So I haven't really seen that in what I've read. But even then, if I read that, I would go, okay, I don't really like this character.
So you think that a character who's originally going to do something begrudgingly or just out of a favor to someone, but then they're like, okay, now it's become personal. You think that makes them a bad protagonist, even though that's a common trope?
Yes, I do. And I think the way that it's in Isom, where he puts his whole family in danger, you'll deny it. I'm sure you'll deny it with your last breath that he punched a hole through a guy, even though he clearly punches a hole through a guy.
What?
That's not heroic behavior. None of what
he did not punch a hole through a guy because guy, if he did, the guy would be dead. The guy is alive.
Even in your comment right here.
No.
Where is it?
You can see in the next panel the guy is curled up in the fetal position. You can't if he has a hole
his skin was punctured and blood spurted out. That's pretty serious. That's like maybe that wasn't in Eric's script. I'll give him the benefit of the doubt. Maybe Cliff Richards was off the goop that day and thought that needed to be more R-rated. But that's a pretty violent scene.
So he punches him in the chest, and then he punches him in the ribs, and then the next scene, the guy is clutching his ribs. So the next scene to the right.
Let's see.
That right there, same security guard is in the fetal position, holding his stomach.
That doesn't mean it's not mortal injury. Look at the blood splatter, man.
Okay.
This is so absurd. Look at the blood splatter. I think it's even on the ground too. Is that blood on the ground? I can't tell because the coloring in this comic is dog shit. But
likely blood.
So
a cracked rib would have the same effect.
Hard enough where you're bleeding from your stomach, you're fucked.
People break ribs during fights all the time.
What? People don't bleed from their fucking ribs in a fight. They bleed from their face.
If the rib is broken and punctures the skin, it bleeds.
That's also an incredibly serious injury if you have a broken rib.
Incredibly serious, not the same as punching a hole through somebody's chest.
His hand does not go completely through.
You said he punched a hole in the guy.
Because there's a wound. He punched a wound hole into the man.
That's not a hole.
That's all the comic. He punches a wound hole.
There's no wound hole. There are areas where blood would be splattered out.
I gotta ask this because you seem like a particularly literal individual.
So what you described was an act that would kill the man.
Do you have autism?
I'm saying the guy is still alive, as you can see.
Do you have autism?
Maybe. I don't know. I've never been diagnosed, but I would not
I
rule out the
would
possibility of that.
assume that, and I'm not even trying to say this in like a dick way, but like I'm saying he punches a hole through someone, he's punching with such a force that it's gonna kill the dude. If you got punched,
See, that's where I disagree
it's
with you.
protruding, you're gonna die without medical intervention like that.
Without medical intervention, maybe.
That's not what a fucking hero does. A hero doesn't burst in because they're not committing a crime right there. You gave in this comment, you gave what is it, the number 3 point on your comment that Avery started the fight and he isn't a good guy. Well, what about when Batman interrupts crime and beats up goons, or when Spider-Man interrupts a bank robbery?
Yep. So,
what crime was Avery interrupting? A guy saying, "Leave my club that I own."
He wasn't.
He didn't even threaten him.
Okay, the club, according to Darren's own admission, is involved in criminal activity.
Okay,
Darren
what's
Isom
the criminal activity? Avery doesn't know what it is, so he's just going to punch a hole through a guy, and that makes it justified.
He doesn't need to know. As soon as he goes there and asks questions, and the response is, "Okay, we're going to have our guys threaten you or beat you up if you don't leave," then he's like, "Okay, there's something sinister going on here." They're not going to, this is not a James Bond villain where he's going to monologue his entire diabolical scheme. And this is how I'm going to.
Actually, it was kind of James Bondy, because what gangster would say, "I'm doing some things legal, some illegal"? Okay. That's kind of a dumb thing.
So again, even if you haven't read Luke Cage, I advise you to watch the first season of Luke Cage on Netflix. It's actually really well done. This was back when, Daredevil, their 3-season run, and Luke Cage, Iron Fist was completely dog crap. So just to avoid that one.
Comics do you read?
But Luke Cage, the villains are similar in their. Sorry, what?
How many comics do you read? It seems to me that you're more of like a movie guy, because these examples that you bring up are like the Falcone thugs, that's from the Batman movie, and the Spider-Man with the robbers, that's from Homecoming.
Yeah. So, like I said, it's been about 20 years since I've actively read comics. I fell away from comics, but I do watch entertainment that is based on superheroes, like have you classic X-Men from the 90s, Spider-Man, Batman, and Superman when they were the animated series.
Have you read Isom?
Yes.
Have you read Alpha Core?
I've read all 3. Alpha Core so far is my favorite. I would think, and like right now, that's probably one of the best comics that is out there. Because I mean, I haven't read a whole bunch of other more modern comics, but I've seen the images from them. I know the basics outline of their story, and I'm like, they don't even compare to what Alpha Core did.
So, what are you even referring to? Because I actually have gone out and I have picked up good modern comics with good art and good stories, and they're not woke either. It's not like every comic you'll find in a comic shop is fucking woke. And that can't be your only selling.
Okay, what is your what modern comic would you say is better than Alpha Core? Maybe I'll check it out.
Giant Robot Hellboy. I enjoyed the Hellboy Christmas special. I like Scott Snyder's Canary. This is a bit older, but Department
I'm sorry,
H
Hellboy?
From Hellboy, yeah.
Yeah, like the comic that's notorious for having terrible art because the guy who's responsible for it can't draw.
Mike Mignola? You mean the guy who pioneered a whole new art style in comics?
Hellboy is cool, and the art style is iconic, but it's not good, even by the artist's own admission.
What are you talking about?
He said the reason he went with Hellboy is because he could not draw. He was bad at drawing, so he stuck with monsters where they didn't need to be as detailed as humans. I don't
think anyone I've ever talked to has disliked.
No, that's he said that in an interview.
I mean, all artists
as to why he went with Hellboy as being a monster as opposed to a human.
But I'm pretty sure everyone knows Mike Mignola draws very well. It's stylized. It's a style. It's his like iconic ink heavy style.
And he drew that style because he could do that, but he couldn't do the
he did it better than anything.
Hang on.
Fucking Rippaverse.
Let me I don't know. Pull this back a little bit. So are we jumping from the writing and the art? We're jumping over to art, and so where are we going with that?
Well, I was talking about the writing, but
because you were talking about the comics you've enjoyed right now.
So
and Tim, you went to the art. Do you want to go to art?
Okay. because he brought up Hellboy as being an example of a good comic. I said,
Yeah.
So when I described Alpha Core, I said overall the whole package. So that is the writing, the art, everything in that. That reminds me very much of the comics that I used to read, back in the 90s when I was like hardcore into comics and I was spending all my money on comics and I had a collection. I don't think I still have a collection. I'm pretty sure I sold it off at one point or another, or it's in a box somewhere that I haven't opened in 20 years. But I was an avid comic reader back when X-Men was in its heyday and that sort of thing. And those were the comics that I had the most of. And Alpha Core reminds me of those comics that I grew up, enjoying.
Okay.
But everything I've seen from more recent comics, as far as the art style and the writing, don't hold a candle to.
For clarification,
But
sorry
you
to
haven't
interrupt.
even read a modern comic.
For clarification, you mean modern comics from the big two, or do you mean like in general? Like, are you talking indie? Can you be a little more specific?
I wouldn't say indie because most of those seem to be better quality. And it's not just the modern too, because I know.
So you're so IDW,
Image Comics and Dark Horse also have comics, but it seems like they're all diminished in quality from what I remember being from the 90s.
Okay.
And
so and Alpha Core is more along the lines of what you are looking for, and it's closer to that, and it's not like a lot of modern offerings. And so the question you had was like, what was a good modern comic? Sam, you listed several. So where were you going? I do want to
make a point though.
Okay, go ahead. Yeah.
The modern Hellboy comics aren't even drawn by Mignola; they're just written by Mignola, so they don't even have whatever you're saying is a bad art style.
Okay, so the art has improved. It's still in a similar style.
I prefer Mignola, but it's different. I would say it's more conventional art than Mignola's, but it still has that macabre style aesthetic. But
so where were you going with that question, Tim?
Okay, so I was just saying, were there some comics that I should be aware of? Because the ones that I am aware of, they all follow the same kind of trend.
What comics are you aware of, Tim? Because if you don't read comics other than Rippaverse, like what is your frame of reference other than the ones 20 years ago? I'm talking about like modern comics.
So most modern comics are converted into animations and movies for those same. Like if you're talking about DC and Marvel, they make the comics and then they have movies or TV shows or animated series based on those comics. And for a while, those animated shows and movies were pretty well done. And then the more recent ones, they've gotten into their early 2000s and 2010s material, and you can see they have fallen off a cliff. This is where you get your Riri Williams. This is where Ironheart bullcrap. Man, that is so frustrating. This is where you get those characters that nobody liked in the comics, and now they're making their mainstream debuts in TV shows and movies, and you can see, this is why I stopped reading comics, because they started putting this around 2000s and 2010s. And this is why I started seeking other forms of entertainment, because they don't have this lame characters with powers that don't make any sense, or like, really, you got another girl genius. Okay, we've got another tech, we got this other person who is doing things that are not physically possible with no explanation. Okay, and at the other side of that is they can do no wrong, and you're like, I don't want nobody likes characters like this. So the only
flawed, well-written, rounded character.
Yeah,
I'm not going to defend Riri Williams or any of the dumb shit that Marvel and DC have put out.
Okay.
Which, by the way, it's not even like Riri Williams has a comic book right now. All these characters are created for like IPs, and they're
she did, but it didn't do very well.
Yeah, they're all canceled after year anyway, and they all revert back to the original, like Tony Stark, Iron Man, Matt Murdock's Daredevil. Yeah. But
so those are the more recent ones that I'm aware of, and the more recent ones.
You mentioned something about what did you say? Unexplainable powers or like nonsense powers. What's Isom's powers, Tim?
I don't know, but I don't know, but I have a suspicion.
Well, you don't know? Well,
I don't know.
That seems like something that you should know after.
Why is that something I should know? Did I know Peter
Yes, you absolutely do know Peter Parker's spot.
Not Peter Parker. The character from Heroes. What was his last name?
I don't care about Heroes. I don't like Heroes. I don't watch Heroes.
What? Heroes season 1 was fantastic.
Well, I don't.
But you didn't know all the characters' powers. You only knew Hero Nakamura's
Well, I don't care about Heroes. Heroes wasn't even a comic book. We're not even talking about a comic book anymore.
But it is a superhero-related story, and it was really well done. And you didn't know all of Sylar's powers. You didn't know all of Peter's powers. You didn't know all of what was his name? I know his. I think the actor's name is Nathan, not the character. It's been a while since I watched that. But, okay. But they didn't explain all of the powers from every character, and it was still really well done. And as the series went on, more of their powers or the secret behind it was revealed, and that was
for Spider-Man, Hulk, Thor, Iron Man, the X-Men. Basically, all the comics you read in the 90s, when those characters first appeared.
Yeah, when those characters first appeared.
Avery, his power is vaguely he's tough.
All right.
What's Brian Solari's power?
Rogue. So when I first started watching X-Men the Animated Series, and this is what got me into comics, is X-Men the Animated Series. Rogue's powers, what were they?
She could fly,
she could punch.
Oh, yeah, that.
Oh, wait, no, those weren't her powers. Her powers is she could take other mutants' powers, and she stole her powers from Captain Marvel. Because I think she killed Captain Marvel.
She gave her the big suck.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That blew me away. I was like, those aren't even her actual powers. Her actual powers are cool. Oh, she's a terribly written character because I didn't know that until I see that was. I don't even know if that was in the first season of the animated show.
Well, I'm not talking about the animated
further on, but that was definitely not in the first few episodes.
I'm fairly certain they show.
No, she's a terribly written character because I didn't know the extent of her powers in the first episode. So we know Avery has super strength and super speed. We don't know the extent of it beyond that. We do know that he has an Accept, and I keep seeing people mention Accept, and they are saying it incorrectly. Accept are not mutants. Accepts are anybody with superpowers. That's just a general term. This could be aliens.
Totally mutants.
This could be aliens. It could be mutants, or it could be people with divine powers.
DC,
I have a question.
Every universe has their own term.
How do you?
They are not mutants because the Norfolka is not mutants.
How do you know that?
How do you know they're Accepts? I don't say they're Accepts.
They are Accepts.
I'm genuinely asking. I don't because I don't. I've read all three as well. I've read Isom 1, 2, and 3.
Don't say that.
I don't.
The books.
How do you how do you know what
it is?
I don't know what the source of their powers are yet.
What are the source of their powers truly? But they are some kind of divine entity.
How do you know that?
Like angels or possibly aliens.
How do you know that though? You're saying you're making these claims.
It's based on what they say.
What do you mean based off what they're saying?
I missed that.
That seems pretty obvious from reading the text. So these are groups of people. These are I don't know, for a lack of a better word. I'm assuming that they are angels. Maybe that's just me, putting my own.
What are you basing this off of?
Based on what they say at the end. What they're talking about is the demons that show up in Isom number 2. At the end here, when he's talking about we cannot risk calling in the cavalry quite yet, although that's a typo.
No, it's not. No, Eric.
The cavalry?
Not a typo.
No.
Eric.
Maybe the cavalry is the name of a group.
Well, do you know what? Wait, hold on. But let me make sure I get my pronunciation right.
Calvary.
Calvary is the hill Christ died on.
Yes.
Was crucified.
And it's also the name of a religious it's the name used by various religious organizations. I thought it was a typo talking about the cavalry, but if it's talking about cavalry as an organization, then again we're talking about a religious organization, which kind of confirms what I was talking about of them being divine entities, possibly angels or something along those lines, fighting demons.
What are their powers? I see green stuff around the black guy, and then the white guy has a blue bow.
Yeah.
What are their powers?
Okay, it has been a very long time since we had a reason to get involved in the affairs of Earth. If it is time, they will soon find out. and our lyrics are not make believe. And if you go back to the lyrics of their song, they're talking about literally fighting demons. And I was like, okay, these guys are not mutants. They are not genetically injured. These guys have a mission to fight demons. And that leads me to believe they are some kind of divine entity, possibly aliens. But considering they're talking about specifically talking about demons,
Blood.
How is that a reach? He said our lyrics are not make believe, and then the lyrics of their song the angels have fallen, my allies are beaten and broken down. I shed not a tear. After all, this is why we are here. A war we were supposed to win. So if I'm to die tonight, I'll kill every demon that stands in my sight. Oh, it's talking about a war between angels and demons, and he says that our lyrics are not make believe. How is that a stretch to say that these individuals are likely divine entities that are tasked with combating demons?
I don't know if they are or aren't, but I'm saying that that's not in the, like, you can say maybe it's hinted that they fight demons.
I mean,
I don't think calling them aliens or...
Well, Yaira is an alien.
Is Yaira an alien? Who says that Yaira is an alien? Jared, is that in anything?
So that wasn't confirmed in the books themselves, but based on what the Saska sisters have been saying, she is not from Earth. And it's kind of implied by the dialogue in Alpha Core when they're talking about Yaira and how she's holding back and she's way more powerful than anything.
That's an Isom too. That's not an Alpha Core.
It's in both.
No, it's not. They don't mention the name Yaira.
They don't say her name, but they talk about the incident in Alpha Core.
When?
I don't think
they reference a single event that happens in either Isom book.
I could be wrong, but I don't. I read Alpha Core twice. I don't remember them mentioning that. I'm
Did
sorry.
You buy the Dokuman card?
So they don't mention her by name, but I remember them talking about that incident in Alpha Core 2, or maybe my memory is incorrect here.
Did you buy the Dokuman cards?
No.
Oh wow. I was expecting you to have.
No, like I said, I haven't bought comics in years. This was the first set of comics I bought in like about 20 years. I was saying so they're standing in the.
I have to get your opinion on this, Tim. What do you think about the ad for Eric's wife's jewelry thing that he slaps right in the middle of the book?
Have you, again, that's very reminiscent of the comics of old because they used to have ads in them all the time. I thought it was I didn't realize it was his wife's business until he clarified that.
Don't you think it's a little odd that there's a singular ad?
Yeah, I would have liked it to have been more, but odds are they didn't have very many people willing to advertise with them.
You would have liked more ads?
What?
Did you just say what?
It makes it feel more like a real comic book when there's ads in there. And like in the second one, they put in a. What do you mean?
You're buying a trade paperback for like $35. Any trade paperback you're gonna get won't have ads in the middle of the story, and at most they have ads for the rest of the trades in the series at the very end of the book.
So maybe not in a consolidated book because the ads are no longer useful. But when I read comics, that was the case. They would have a couple of pages, they'd have an ad. They'd have a couple of pages, they'd have an ad. A couple of pages, an ad. You'd have like three or
That's
four
one of the
ads
reasons
per
I
comic.
stopped reading floppies too, because it broke the flow of reading. And I've noticed when I've started buying floppies again that like Dark Horse and the Independents don't do ads, and it's 10 times better.
So I actually thought it was an ad that wasn't real for the first one.
What?
And I didn't realize
you thought it was
an
ad that wasn't real? You thought it was like something in the Rippaverse?
No, I thought it was inserted to make it look more like the comics of old. Because if you look at the cover of the Isom books, where it's look like Isom 2, featuring the first appearances of.
So you thought that they made a fake ad
because look at the way he lays out the cover of Isom 2, and what he's going for is a throwback to the comics of old.
It's astonishing to me that you're actually like, I want more ads. For one, I remember ads in comics. I remember they were for video games. I remember they were for action figures.
They were for
They weren't
whoever
for
would advertise.
women's jewelry. Did
They
that
were for
not tip
whoever-
you
That's
off
right.
that that's a little strange that it's
No.
women's jewelry ad in a fucking comic book?
And maybe Eric knows way more about his target
No.
demos than we do, right?
Yeah, maybe they're all trans like Yairo.
Maybe. I don't know.
Okay.
That's just a joke.
No,
Maybe he has a big female audience.
I
It's a
didn't
joke
realize.
I'm
Yeah,
making,
like I
that's
said,
all.
I didn't realize it was a legitimate ad for his wife's business, and I don't fault him for trying to promote his wife's business.
I do.
Odd. Why?
Because you're putting an ad breaking up the flow of reading in a product that people paid an inflated price for.
Okay, inflated is.
It is inflated. $35.
$35 for what? 100 plus pages, or
the original?
I forget how many are in.
How many are in the?
There are more than 90 plus pages in all.
That it's inflated. That's absolutely inflated. You know, I can go to the comic book store and I can get a image trade paperback that's 120 pages for $10. Selling a trade paperback for $35 when it's less than 100 is inflated.
Now, when you're talking about, are you talking about a new book or a book that is a reprint of an existing one?
That literally doesn't matter.
Yes, it does. Because if it's a reprint, that means they've already made the money off of that and they lower the price.
Some comics only make only make money in the trades. In fact, a lot of comics are written just specifically for the trades, and some modern comics are written only as trades. Ed Brubaker has been releasing, I think, only trades for a couple, maybe not only, but
there is a distinct difference from the first issue of something, the price point on that, versus reprints of that. Or
not for printing. Not for printing. If you're gonna argue for like paying the artist, yeah, you've already paid the artist, but no, not for printing.
I'm not saying the cost to produce. I'm saying the cost that a company charges. They charge more for the original prints than for reprints because the price goes down over time. Now, if you understand anything about economics, this is supply and demand. If there is a lot of demand, you can charge a higher price. And
there's actually a higher demand for trade paperbacks and floppies. If you look at any, yes, there is.
Okay.
Literally, if you look at any of the sales charts, trades
higher demand at the price point. If they charge the same price point for those as they did for the originals, the demand would not be as high. So when demand is lower, as it would be over time, the price gets lower to increase the demand.
This is kind of missing the forest for the trees. 35 for a trade is a shit ton. I mean, I don't for a 90 page
for a 90 plus page for a first print.
Yes. For anything that I've seen crowdfunding, that's a lot. I've seen crowdfunded books with smaller print runs than Eric's. That, and you know, if you know anything about economies of scales, larger print runs means lower price per unit. I've seen a lot of comics with higher page counts and lower print runs selling a lot cheaper than 35. That's why I say when I mean it's an inflated price. 35.
It's not an inflated price because he was able to sell the comics at that price.
That's not what I'm saying. Of course, his audience is going to buy his merch.
Then you don't get to determine what is an inflated price and what isn't an inflated price.
I'm comparing it against similar products of similar cost to produce.
Okay.
That's what I'm comparing it with. Now, Jared, I don't know how many trades you've bought. I know you've backed quite a few crowdfunding projects.
Back a lot of stuff, yeah.
Is 35's high? I'm not like not accurate
in indie comics. Yes and no. It's generally high because most of the time, it's hard to. I mean, if you're gonna go strictly with indie comics, it's genuinely hard to say because most of the time, most indie comics you're not going to be getting 96 to 112 pages. Most of the indie comics that I've backed have been 24 up to Common America probably has the highest page count. That's I think it's usually 64 pages or so.
Yes.
And their pricing is generally going to be between. Well, Richard Embry recently did a comic that was it's in the 20s. That one was $5 because he printed when he was talking about that, he printed just a ton of those, so he got them at a really low price per copy.
Mm-hmm.
But you generally you're going to see 10 to 15 on the low end, and then going up to 25 is usually the highest that I see. Common America is pretty cheap for the page count, and then the only way that you usually go up higher than that is if you go up to like the higher tiers. Some people offer hardback. Some people, Nicholas Mueller does this. He primarily does black and white printing, and then he'll do special limited color runs where that will be more expensive because it's more expensive to print color. So you can see higher prices, but generally you're going to see somewhere between 10 to 25 is usually what you'll see for probably 20 to 40 or so pages.
Yeah. So on the higher end, you would get $25 for a 60-ish page comic, like for the extreme. You're saying, at least from what you were saying, that's what it sounded like, and from what I've seen, that seems to be about right. So for an extra $10, you almost get double the page. Well, in one of these,
well, actually, Mr. X just pointed out a good example. Tyler from Draw and Talk makes 200 page books for 15. And the thing is, with Eric too, it's actually more fair to compare him print run wise with mainstream books, because he's ordering massive print runs.
No,
the economies
he doesn't.
Yes, he does.
He doesn't have the same ability to negotiate as like DC or Image or Dark Horse.
Well, I'm not just talking about negotiation. I'm saying that compared to like a different indie creator, his cost per unit is going to be way lower. This isn't even up for debate. It's the more in your print run, the lower per unit cost you're going to have.
I can't remember if it's Alpha Core or if it's Isom 2, but one of those is 120 pages.
That was Isom 2, I believe, was 112. And then I believe the Alpha Core is also 96.
Okay. So Isom 2 is 112 pages for that price point. And I don't maybe I got a lower price than when it was originally announced, but I got it for $30. I'm like, that's not including shipping, I know. But that's
you could get it for $5 too if you just wait.
Okay. Well, if I did that, then I wouldn't have it on hand to reference it when talking about somebody and disproving what they've stated about it.
What have you disproved that I've said so far? I'm curious.
Okay, so when you were talking about, I just quoted from it when I was talking about how Norfolka, they appear to be something other than mutants, and you were like, "Oh, Excepts are all mutants." I'm like, no, he's.
I don't think I said Norfolka were Excepts. I said that Excepts are their version of mutants.
No.
Yes.
So there's a conversation between Avery and I don't remember the guy's name. The bodyguard. Swan. I gotta look it up, don't I?
I thought you were a Rippa fan.
Santuan?
Santuan.
No, his name's Sandy Cheeks.
Yeah, so Santuan, and they talk, and they say it's just a catch-all term that caught on. It's for anybody who is not normal. This could mean aliens. It can mean divine beings.
That
it can mean
the people that you think are angels.
So this goes back to
they don't say that in the book. They don't call.
Mr. X mentioned this earlier.
They don't need
he thinks that he mentioned that they're the equivalent of metahumans from DC.
Yeah, that's what I said too. I said there's like mutants from Marvel or metahumans in DC.
It's kind of like a catch-all, like in DC.
Metahumans means anybody who's not a human, right?
It's like anyone that's enhanced in DC. That can pretty much mean anyone that's like super.
It's like Superman and Wonder Woman. They're
metahuman.
I don't think no. Superman and Wonder Woman are not counted as metahumans because they're not humans. In DC, metahuman is someone who's a biological human.
That's okay.
So Superman, he's just Kryptonian. Wonder Woman's just
he's just alien. Got it. Okay. Yep.
But Flash,
Martian Manhunter is not a metahuman.
No, like Green Lantern's neither, because he just gets his powers from a ring. So it's
he's just a dude without his ring.
It's people with inherent powers. It's all too complicated. Very good.
That doesn't explain Gooding, because Gooding seems to be kind of like an Iron Man type. Where
is he an Accept, Tim? Is he an Accept, Tim?
Wasn't he described as one?
No, they don't say that at all.
I think so.
I was under the impression that he was considered an accept.
Based on what?
Maybe my understanding of that.
Get out
is
your
incorrect.
comic and disprove me. Let me hear those pages flip.
Let's see. So I thought he was described as an accept. Maybe that is my own interpretation. But
it's almost like there's inconsistent writing and no one really knows what the fuck's going on in these comics.
No, so I've said, based on what I've read, accept seems to be a term for a catch-all based on what Avery said in the first one.
Like,
you don't care
all
that
these,
what I'm saying is based on the actual
what
book
did you
itself.
do to prove what I said wrong?
Whew. Okay.
Mr. X,
like we can roll this back and people can watch it because I'm fairly certain that you said the Norfolka guys were accepts, and
we don't. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong, but as we can't know that until more is revealed, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, you could be right or you could be wrong because we don't know yet, right?
No, we don't know, but there's enough hints where we can make reasonable deductions on what is going on.
What do you like about Isom?
Hmm?
What do you like about Isom?
Well, I'm a pretty big fan of neo-noir or just noir in general, and Isom #1 fits that bill. It's very typical. Hey, it's very reminiscent of detective novels. In some places, yes. In other places, it seemed a little clunky.
Can you give me an example of some good dialogue in Isom? Because I know John Delaroz. I watched his review. Jared, have you watched his review where he goes,
of Isom? No.
Yeah, it's very funny because I don't know if it's tongue in cheek or not, but he talks specifically about the dialogue, and he goes, I think the dialogue here is really, really good, and that's a hard thing. His description of liking the dialogue is so funny.
I've watched Joshua Moon's review of Isom. I've watched EVS's review of Isom, and I've watched Moronic Opinion's review of Isom. Those are the only ones I've seen.
So I've heard people in your sphere criticize
I don't have
Avery and Yaira first.
I don't have a sphere. I am a sphere. Look at my profile picture.
I guess. People that are in the let's hate Isom and the Rippaverse no matter what category. Is that fair? Or is that an unfair
exception? I just read it and I thought it was dog shit. That's literally my whole opinion.
Okay, so you did. So I liked the dialogue exchange between Avery and Yaira when they first interact because he was just flung by Santuan
half a mile,
and collides into Yaira, and they're both out of their elements here.
He just flings right into
right out of there,
yeah.
Dude's a bouncer. That's how you bounce,
barely even an inconvenience.
Yeah. That's how you throw someone out of the car.
He threw him probably about the space of a block.
Wow. And then, whoop, back, right into Yaira. I'm reading the pages right now.
Yeah.
From my copy. I'm flipping through them.
Because he was in the parking lot and now he's in the middle of the street.
And he goes, let me guess. He hired you to clean up. That doesn't make any fucking sense. You just went through the air like a block and collide with the woman.
Yeah. Does he know that?
Is he hired you to clean up? You crash into this woman in the fucking air. That doesn't make any sense of what.
Does he know that? Does he know why she's there? Does he know that he hit her in the back? No, he just knows that he hit someone in the air. And it's like, oh, he's got another accept on his
and that accept would be perfectly positioned in the air to be hit.
That sounds like to hit him in the air. Assumption. He doesn't know what happened. He doesn't know that he randomly collided with her because she was busy with something else. He knows that somebody hit him in the air. That's all he knows. He's like, oh, now I've got to deal with two of these.
What?
Let me guess. He hired you to clean up.
Assumption if you hit someone in the air. That's a retarded piece of dialogue. I feel like anything that I'm going to bring up, you're just going to go, no, it does make sense. And it doesn't. Like that, you can be like, maybe that's not a good example.
I feel like probably not too many people have to think about what they're going to do when they collide with people in the air.
Yeah,
Probably
because
come
it
up very
doesn't
often.
happen.
Yeah, it
But
doesn't
when
happen very often.
in a world where superheroes are
Right.
everywhere, which is what these books are setting up,
Yeah.
is that the world doesn't revolve around Avery. There are other accepts, there are other forces, they're all acting independently of each other, and they're all happening at the same time. The world doesn't stop for Avery so he can do his mission while everything else stops. This is not the Marvel universe where when Thor has a problem, Thor has to solve it on his own and can't rely on Iron Man and the Hulk, and they just disappear for a full movie. And Vision disappears after WandaVision for forever and never comes back.
Right.
You keep
This is a
bringing
lived-in
up
world
the
where all this is
movies.
happening
You
at the
realize the
same time.
comics aren't like that and cross over like every issue.
Okay.
Well, we're talking about a comic book.
Yes.
We're not talking about a movie.
They follow the same format.
They don't. Just because it's an adaptation of a comic doesn't mean it follows the same format. You can do a lot of things in comics, like have constant crossovers, because you don't have to worry about a casting budget. That's a ridiculous way to compare.
Yes. But it's also, that's what's going on right here in this comic book, and you don't like it for some reason.
I think that him flying through the air to collide with a random woman who has no impact on the plot is retarded. Yes, I'm on record saying that. That is my position. I think that the idea to have him fly through the air and crash into someone who just randomly starts kicking the shit out of him is dumb.
That doesn't...
Yeah?
So why would that be dumb? This is just something that happened, and then there's a mistaken identity.
The chances of someone flying through the air, colliding with another person in the air, is stupidly low. It's like a Deus Ex Machina. You know what like a Deus Ex Machina is?
Yeah, I know what a Deus Ex Machina is.
It's like that. It's pulling a plot thread out of your ass.
Because she's already shown that she's in the area, and she was dealing with Alpha Core before. She's flying around that area.
Actually, wasn't he? She was half a mile away. It's pretty far away.
Not when you're flying.
I guess not. I guess not when you're being thrown through the air by a big burly black man. I bet you Santuan can point.
What do you mean
somewhere
she was half a mile away? Where does it say she was half a mile away when I don't
because when Isom goes to the club Merc with a Q for some reason.
Yeah.
Maybe the Q is for queer. Maybe this is like an LGBT comic. I don't know. I'm not into that shit.
Sure. Why not?
It says half a mile away up there. Do you not see that?
It says half a mile when he's outside of that. So she's having the fight half a mile away. She is running away from Alpha Core, and that's when they collide.
Half of fighting them, right?
Well, they are fighting each other, and then they disengage, right? Alpha Core, she is no longer with Alpha Core.
Where do they show her disengaging? What that doesn't make any sense. You're saying she runs away. It seems like she's punched through the air and collides with.
No, she's not punched through the air.
Then why the fuck would she be hitting Avery with her back?
Because he was thrown at her back. Like
Jared, do you see the?
Do you think she's flying towards him with her back to him, or that he was thrown and hit her in the back?
I think she's being punched or thrown.
Well, then where is Alpha Core?
I don't know. Maybe you should ask Eric July that, because I don't think he knows. That's a very good point. Where is Alpha Core when they throw her right?
Why isn't her hair blue?
Back?
Doesn't her hair turn blue when she's using her powers?
No, there are streaks
only
of blue.
Sometimes.
It's not always
walking away from business.
So it is blonde with blue streaks, or blue shows up at various times.
Okay.
More than likely, this is her when she uses her ice powers. It turns blue.
Why does it turn blue when she's walking away from?
She has ice powers.
Yeah, you would never guess.
That's what the blue beams are. They are ice.
Why don't they freeze? What's her face?
Yeah, Valdez is getting iced.
Yeah, why don't they freeze Valdez if they're ice powers?
because it shoots her. So I just wanted to verify. So she shoots her in the back with the ice. So
Yeah, why doesn't it freeze her?
Because maybe it takes time to take effect. I'm not sure. I don't know the full extent of her powers.
Do you
Or if
maybe
those
just want to say, instead of defending it, like, oh yeah, that's an inconsistency.
Okay, so I'm on the page where they collide. So
Okay.
I'm going to put my finger here and go back to the last time that we saw Yaira to kind of put this
Okay.
together.
So
the
Valdez
last
is
time we
falling.
see Yaira, and I'll try to hold it up here
Yeah.
for the audience.
Valdez is
They're doing
falling.
like a stare down. So like she had blasted Valdez. I'm sorry about the green screen effect. Alpha Core
It's
being
cool.
green. Yeah, right. So I'm adding a
I
little
like it
something
more
to
than
it.
their uniforms.
Gotcha. Yeah, no,
I agree. Alpha Core should wear my brand for their uniform.
Sponsor
So,
them.
here you go.
So,
that'll be the next ad.
and then during that time, Avery
so
is talking with.
They're doing a
Darren.
stare down. Then they're talking. Exactly right. Yep. Sorry to distract.
Then the
so
fight
then he
starts.
goes flying, and this is the next time we see Yaira.
Yeah. So we have we have a relative idea of how much time passed during that. It was the entire conversation with Darren. This is several minutes later. That's plenty of time for Yaira to get half a block away from where she was. And Alpha Core, as we see later on, this was probably in Isom 2. I don't remember, or if it was in, you guys say it wasn't in Alpha Core. I'm going to take your word for that. Maybe my memory
I don't remember it. I could be wrong too.
But when they talk about Yaira and they're talking about collecting information on her, and because she was strong enough to defeat all three of them, and Brian says she was holding back, and according to his assessment of her powers, she could easily have defeated all three of them, and yet she was just pushing them away,
why is she
nullifying them and moving on without what she was doing.
She's being flung through the air. Jerry, can you put that panel back up? That is two people being thrown at each other, colliding.
It looks like
at her
she was either, in my opinion, it looks like she was either flying backwards or thrown or punched backwards because of her positioning.
Well, I don't know why she'd be flying back.
If she was she was stock still or moving forward, it seems like she'd be lurching forward. But it looks like she's moving back and colliding.
You can tell that they were actually moving the opposite directions of each other because they both fall relatively flat down.
Yes. So if she is leaving Alpha Core and making sure they're not following her, then she's flying backwards and being like, okay. And then she runs into Avery and they get in this confrontation.
You wouldn't fly backwards. You would fly into a building if you did that.
If she's going down the street, she's going to fly into a building. The roads just suddenly end in a building.
Dude, I don't think this is a position.
Because if you look at where they land, they're in the intersection of two roads. Or at least that's what it looks like.
You're saying a road never curves? For one, this is stupid. Are you really telling me, looking at that panel, that it does not look like she's in the same position Avery is after Avery just got punched? That's the same posture.
Well, so
Jared,
maybe
put it back up.
Yeah, I get you. But you're acting as if there isn't any reasonable explanation for that.
She's clearly being punched into him or thrown into him.
So if she was being punched away by Alpha Core,
then why wouldn't they be right there?
We punched her. We're just going to leave her alone now.
Why would they leave her alone if their whole job was to confront
I don't know.
Yaira,
That's your assessment because you say she was punched. I'm saying, given that Alpha Core doesn't show up,
this is amazing. You're fighting tooth and nail over these writing decisions that you don't know the answers for. When you're trying to
this is all speculation. When there is no given explanation, you jump to this is the worst possible interpretation of the events that we see. And I'm saying, why must that be the only? All I have to do is provide a counter narrative. This is the same thing when you're talking about a court case and you're like, oh, this guy's obviously the murderer. And I'm like, okay, that's only true if there isn't another plausible scenario. I'm offering plausible scenarios.
That's not what reasonable doubt means. And you probably watched 12 Angry Men.
That is reasonable doubt.
Which is propaganda, 12 Angry Men, and that's not how the legal system works. For all the people out there.
Because it has to be a unanimous verdict, and it says reasonable doubt. If there is a reasonable explanation as to something else.
I don't think it's a reasonable explanation.
Well, okay.
This is such a funny stand.
1 second. So we're talking now we're confusing and I'm not
But
I'm not saying either of you are intentionally doing this, but if we're talking about something that this is not real. Everything in this
I
book,
know.
Real to me, Jared.
yeah, I know that. I know.
Thank
I
you for
know that.
explaining that. I was just about to say, I thought this was real life.
Well,
I was
obviously,
just
you know that.
flying around the street the other day. Come on, man.
Well, that's
I
cool.
live
We're
in
not fucking
Florida.
5-year-olds.
But my point is not that you don't know that. My point is that when something isn't real, everything in there was decided by somebody and it was written. So he could have done an infinite number of things, and he chose to do this. So
Yeah.
It's not like
So-
in reality. I wouldn't think it's like in reality where you're trying to come up with a plausible explanation to explain something that's, you know, legally important. It's you guys are talking about like, why did he decide to do this? Was it a good writing decision? Does this advance the story in the best way? Like those are the things that are like at the core of this, right?
Yeah.
So the reason, because I brought this up as an example of dialogue, because
Oh.
Avery thinks she's working for Darren. She
Right.
thinks he's working for Alpha Core and is trying to stop her from whatever she's doing.
Right.
Because so I thought that was a great bit of exchange there. And, you know, Sam is like, oh, look, this is all terrible writing because, look, they collided into each other in the middle of the air. That's something that never happens in comic books. Things don't just happen because.
That's actually not what I said. I said that's retarded for you to
said-
assume the person you got flung into in the air is hired by
Okay.
the guy who just now threw you out of the club. I said that was retarded.
Unless she was on her way to the club at Darren's request and collided with him in the air.
Yeah, that sounds like a retarded excuse, though.
So if Darren has San Juan on staff, but he's got Yaira on call, and he calls like, hey, we've got somebody to deal with here. She's flying in. Avery gets flown into the air. He
I
crashes
can't believe
into somebody.
Avery thought of all this when he got flung through the air.
No, that's why he mistakes her for working for Darren. But then
I'm gonna bring up
starts
my
thinking to
favorite
himself,
piece
it's like,
of,
wait a minute,
dialogue
maybe.
soon. Okay, my favorite piece of dialogue is in Isom too.
Okay.
It was just so good. This is such a good piece of dialogue. It made it into the trailer for Alpha Core. I think this is like Shakespearean.
You're talking about when they're talking about investigation, right, Valdez?
Yes.
Okay.
Where Brian Solari, I'm looking through my copy right now. What is it?
I'm surprised you didn't go for Larry Shungite.
Oh, I love Larry Shungite, but there's not a whole lot. There's not a whole lot of dialogue there. Larry, we'll talk about Larry Shungite next. Where is this?
Okay.
Dead air. I'm
Alpha Core
causing dead air
headquarters.
trying to find this dialogue.
It's towards the.
While you guys are looking for various things, be sure to check out the Alpha Core campaign. Link in the description or something. I don't know.
All right. So I found it. It's towards the beginning of the book. It's like about a quarter of the way in.
I have Alpha Core headquarters. I'm looking at that page right now. Where does he go? Oh, there we go. I don't need to be reminded of your investigative talents. Braxwell spoke highly of them, and truth be told, it's the only reason you're wearing that suit. That is I just love that dialogue, Lynn. It's so natural. I can totally imagine someone saying that in real life and it not coming across as weirdly robotic.
Apparently you have no experience in the military. I'm 8 years prior military. It was in the U.S. Air Force. So during briefings,
give it up
especially when you're dealing with
people.
Marines and Army personnel, when they're trying to be professional, that is very typical of how they speak with one another in briefings.
So they're all robotic.
No, he is a ex-military member. They talk about that.
What war did he serve in?
I don't know if he served in a war, but he is prior military.
I was just asking.
I didn't serve in any actual war unless you count the war on terror.
They don't mention what war he's in. Jared, I think, got a comment from someone who's like, they say that it's the Great War of Separation. He's a veteran of. I'm like, they don't say that in the
which
book.
is the Civil War that I was alluding to previously. Which
yeah, but they
Texas
also
seems to be
don't
its
even
own
talk
country as a
about
result
that.
of that.
You just know that from the Dokuman.
It's
cards.
context clues. No, I've never
have
read the
to spend
Dokemon.
$100.
These are things that I pieced together
A
myself
context
based on
clue
the
would be
information.
a map in the police station.
No, that is something. That's not a context clue. That's
That
something
is a
explicitly being
clue.
spelled out for you. Context is where you take clues from the existing comics and you piece them together.
But
you don't need.
anyway,
It's not a context
let's
clue
go to
for you to look at a
Larry
map and be like,
Shun
"Oh,
Guy.
that's the map."
Well,
what's
if it's
the
in the
context
background,
required?
they don't point out in the dialogue. Yeah, that's context clue.
No, context clues are.
Anyway, so let's go to
Wow.
the Larry Shun Guy.
I can't find my copy of
Obertonic
oh, well.
Arena. Obertonic. What does that mean? What does Obertonic mean?
It's probably the name of a company.
Obertonic. It literally
That probably is the name
nothing
of a
comes
company.
up.
Actually, that does make sense.
Like
I wouldn't want to
Staples
name my
Center,
company that, but that probably is the name of the company.
I mean, no, every arena is named after some business.
Yeah, like the Allstate Center. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, I was more looking up if that word had a meaning or if it's just like nonsense, and it seems like it's just nonsense. But
there is a company called Alpha Corps, spelled the same way as the organization Alpha Corps.
Well, that's great. What do you think about the Larry Shun Guy sequence?
Like I said, so I'm not a big fan of wrestling, but I do know that Eric is, and that entire sequence is straight out of when it was called the WWF. Before they lost the lawsuit, it was changed to WWE or Raw.
We all know Larry Shun Guy, Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah,
because Shun Guy stone. It's a stone.
Okay,
it's a play on that.
Yeah,
but I'm saying, what do you think about this sequence in the story? Because to me, it's 6 pages of filler. That's one unnecessary splash page of the arena. It's a bunch of guys talking, no action. It's another splash page of a crowd chanting Larry Shun Guy, but the focal point of that page, you don't even see Larry Shun Guy. And then there's another whole ass page of him silently walking to the ring. 2 more panels of him silently grabbing a microphone. And then he starts to cut his promo. In all of this, we see 0 wrestling action. So if you're going to say this is his homage to wrestling, I don't know. I would have wanted to see some action. It's a guy walking up to a microphone, half of it.
So you wanted to see action. They hinted at action, therefore it's
hinted.
Bad. Yes, that they are setting up that in this universe there are excepts that are part of a professional sports.
For one,
or at
they
least
don't
as
actually
professional as wrestling can get.
They don't say anything about him being an except.
It's the when what's his face is talking about the costumes.
He just said he made costumes for a wrestling league. He's a tailor. I assume he makes costumes for a lot of things. And he formerly did it, and now he only does superhero suits. So to me, that's just
he does superhero suits and suits for this wrestling league.
So
why would they need him specifically to make their spandex costumes if they're just run-of-the-mill spandex costumes? You could get that done.
Well, here's an example. They said that he can reduce fall damage. If you're a wrestler, even if you had no superpowers, wouldn't that be nice to be thrown from a big ladder onto the ground and not be hurt? Boom, there's your reasonable explanation of why it's unreasonable to just assume they're except wrestlers. Even though I think that's what they're going for.
It's very strongly hinted at
why the hell would
they
be in here? But my point is, why do you want this to be the way that they show that there's except wrestlers? If there's superpowered wrestlers,
to be the way,
the better way to engage your reader, because again, like what Jared said, we're not talking about real events that happened. The better way to engage the reader is to show them wrestlers doing amazing things you can only do with superpowers. And these are superpowered people wrestling, and this is something cool visually. Instead, we get a guy walking to a microphone. That's boring.
It's world building, and you don't like it. Okay, that's understandable. But not liking something isn't the same thing as saying it is bad.
How is my version any less world building? Wouldn't it be more? I mean,
I'm not saying it's less world building. I didn't say it was less world building. I'm
Yeah,
saying
but wouldn't it be
is
bad? Like, wouldn't you want to see the wrestling actually happen instead of a guy walking to a microphone?
okay. So if
I'm
since the
asking
focus
you
of
your
the comic,
personal opinion, Tim. You can have a
I
personal opinion outside of just defending this. Would you rather have a guy, Stone Cold Steve Austin, walking to a microphone, or would you rather have them show their superpowered wrestling by actually showing superpowered wrestling?
as someone who's not a fan of wrestling, the parts I remember the most about it is the smack talk before the actual match. The
You
number
gotta
I've
be
seen
kidding
wrestling
me, dude.
matches,
You
the
gotta
number
be
of
kidding
actual
me.
wrestling matches that I can remember is like maybe one where Mick Foley fell off the cage. The rest of the time, I remember Stone Cold Steve Austin coming out and giving his Austin 316 speech. That's far more memorable than all of the other wrestling matches that I may have seen, however many years ago, 10 plus years ago. I remember the smack talk, and they're
Wouldn't
more
you
well
like to
known
see
for
that
the smack
paired
talk.
with the superpowered wrestling, though? Instead of just having, again, there's
Okay.
there's like pretty much 3 pages of him silently walking to a mic.
Man.
Wouldn't you rather
Okay.
maybe have wrestling and then he cuts the promo, or he cuts the promo and then someone jumps out and you see superpowered wrestling? Instead, what we get is a guy
Okay, so
turning
that's a
off the
different type of
TV.
comic then. This is not a balls to the wall action every page comic.
But I'm saying that that's a more boring choice. It's a worse choice.
Oh.
What Eric did, it's not engaging to a reader. When I read that, I was thinking, why the hell did they do 7 pages or 6 pages about a wrestler who doesn't appear later on, that doesn't give us a cool visual,
Doesn't appear
that doesn't give us anything other than there's wrestling in this world, which I don't know why you assume there.
What do you
Okay,
what do you want to say to that,
So
Tim?
we should cut out everything that's not related directly to Avery and Avery looking at Jasmine. All of that needs to be
Actually, yeah, that would be way better for pacing and for keeping the story focused.
And all of these characters would then be introduced later and have no tie-in with the originals and with the first 2 comics.
The Alpha
So
Core
Alpha Core should just be introduced by itself, and
Yeah,
Alpha Core is
there's no
independent of
difference.
Avery, and they
Did
both
you
go
read
on for
Alpha
10
Core?
plus years, and then
Did you
finally
read
Alpha
it,
Core
Tim?
and Avery meet.
Did you read it, Tim? Well, they still don't meet in this.
No, they don't have to meet.
Okay, then why don't you just introduce them
There's
in their own
already
book?
a connection because Alpha Core and Yaira had an interaction, and Yaira and Avery had an interaction. So we all know they exist in the same continuity.
I mean, they didn't have to have that interaction for you to know that. Just the fact that Alpha Core opens
how
in
many
Forest
years
Park would
was
tell you.
Spider-Man in Manhattan and Daredevil in Manhattan before they actually crossed paths?
I don't know. Do you know the answer to that?
I know it was decades of both of those comic runs before they actually interacted, before they started doing crossover events. And so that means they went decades
I do know
without
that
encountering
Spider-Man
one
crossed
another.
over with Fantastic Four.
Fantastic Four. I knew that. Yeah.
One of his first appearances.
So they are all in New York City. They're all superheroes, and it takes decades for them to interact with each other. That seems
well.
silly.
I mean, I just gave you an example though that made sense.
Yeah, a Fantastic Four and
joining
Spider-Man.
the
Yeah.
Fantastic Four early on as for like a bit issue.
Okay.
Okay.
So, and then now, if I'm not mistaken, Wolverine wasn't introduced in an X-Men comic.
No,
he was introduced in the Incredible Hulk.
Right? Yeah, Hulk.
Yeah.
So?
And then he was later. And then how many times have the X-Men interacted with the Incredible Hulk?
A lot.
I mean, years later, not for the first couple issues, or not for the first.
It was years later. I mean, they did crossover events pretty frequently. The thing is, you don't actually know any of the comics history. I don't know why you keep bringing this up.
No,
it seems to me that you don't.
What I'm saying is, you insist that they be separate and they not have any interaction, and any interaction
I didn't actually
detracts from the story because you look. Larry Shungite
said
being
anything
a part
that
of this
wasn't
world,
related to Avery's story should be cut. That doesn't mean these characters can't appear if they have relevance.
Well,
that
is his appearance, and that is the setup for his character. and they've talked about maybe doing comics related to Larry Shungite.
I can't wait. I'll be first in line to get those.
So there is a confirmed Yaira comic. There is confirmed Alpha Core #2, Isom #3, and then a Gooding book.
Yeah.
The only ones we don't know are these other characters that they like. Norfolka might have his own comic series. Larry Shungite might have his own comic series. None of that's been confirmed yet, but it seems like that's what they're hinting at.
Why does this matter to anything that I'm saying?
So, but you're saying we should have cut. But you're saying they should have cut all that out.
Yes.
You're saying Yaira should not have shown up. Alpha Core should not have shown up. Larry Shungite should not have shown up. Gooding shouldn't have shown up. All of these characters, because they're not.
Well, actually, I think Gooding is the only one
necessary for
the plot. I think that Gooding does impact the plot, and it makes sense why he's there. I think Larry.
No, it's not, because it's completely unrelated to Jasmine. Gooding
has
nothing
related
to do with
Avery. What story that they're telling with Avery?
Oh, but you hate that storyline. You think
I don't like it, but that doesn't mean I don't see that.
But book 2 has nothing to do with Jasmine or Darren, so that should be cut completely.
But you're just switching the subject now about whether or not I like the story.
Why should Gooding and that side story that detracts from the main plot, which you compared to like, oh, it's like Lord of the Rings: The Two Towers if they stopped trying to get the ring to Mordor. That's what
that's why I said.
So then book 2 should be cut completely.
Yes. Yes, I stand by that. Book 2 should be cut.
Okay. See, so my deduction based on your previous responses was correct. You realize
that you don't actually have like a point here. There's no argument being presented here.
So what you're saying is it should just be a general story of Avery looking for a person, finding the person, going.
It should be a focused narrative that actually has a plot that's consistent throughout the 3 issues.
This is to answer the question. This is the X-Men and Hulk's first meeting. This is 15 cents.
Okay.
March 1966.
Okay. So this is after the introduction of Wolverine, or
prior. Wolverine.
This is well before,
in the 70s. So they've had a history for a while.
I don't mean to derail, but I actually found the answer, so I wanted to share.
Gotcha. Okay. So what I was saying is, was there a whole lot of overlap between, hey, these characters exist in the same universe, in the same area, or is it just a one-time thing? Or because it sounds like Sam is saying that there should only be one-time, every superhero in the Rippaverse should be isolated, unless they directly impact the core story of a story arc. Without that, it's useless. Get rid of them. There's no reason for them to show up.
Yeah, I mean, that's a basic plot. You're saying if a character doesn't interact with the main plot of the book, should it be in it?
So are you? Did you read Game of Thrones, the first one?
No.
Or did you read any of the series? Or did you watch?
No, but that's also a series. That's a series without a true main character. There's multiple narrators. Isom is about Avery. It's Isom. So that's like if you brought up an X-Men book and they followed different X-Men. That's a team book.
Okay.
It's a book about multiple people. Isom is Isom. Do you see that difference right there?
Watching the first season of Game of Thrones,
if this was called Rippaverse,
no,
I don't think this would be a criticism.
Watching the first
Game
season
of Thrones is about the whole of Westeros.
Watching the first season of Game of Thrones or reading the first book, you would be under the impression that Ned Stark is the main character.
Well, he's a prominent character, but so is Jon Snow.
He is the main focus of the majority of the book. Almost all of the events of the book surround him or members of his family. That, like when the events at the beginning, when he's about the wall, are related to Jon Snow because Ned sends Jon Snow off to the wall.
But it's not
everything related to King's Landing is because he's on his way to King's Landing. He helped the current king become king. Everything revolves around Ned Stark, and Ned Stark dies at the. Well, sorry for spoilers if anybody. Ned Stark dies. That signals to the audience, hey, there is no main character.
I was on the second and last episode of season 2 or season 1.
That's many people went into the series or the first book thinking Ned Stark was a main character, and when he dies, they're like, "Oh, there is no main character." There's a bunch of characters all interacting.
Thrones told literally from different perspectives. They have a POV character for each chapter, right?
Yes.
So even though
the majority of them are Ned Stark related.
Yeah, but not all of them. And it's not called Ned Stark.
It's more than 70% of the book is related to Ned Stark.
Song of Ice and Fire, but
Yeah, well, that's the whole series. The first book is not.
It's called Game of Thrones, but the series is A Song of Ice and Fire.
Yeah,
it's not the Starks. It's not. There is arguably no main character
because because Isom is the name on the comic.
Yes,
that's the only perspective it should be told from, and no other perspective.
Well, I mean, if I bought a comic that was the Hulk and I got Sue Storm instead, I would be disappointed.
No. You didn't get Sue Storm. No,
what do you mean? No, I'm saying
when Sue Storm,
be disappointed if that happened to me.
When Sue Storm shows up in those books, you're disappointed because she's there and she shows up, she does something, she goes away. No, now, when I was reading comics, Spider-Man was he always made some kind of cameo in whatever I was reading, and it was he shows up and either the characters in that series save Spider-Man or Spider-Man saves them and then disappears and he's not there for the rest of the story. Cut all of that out. That's bad writing.
Understand the difference?
No, you don't understand
characters that don't interact with the story. Like Larry Shungite doesn't interact with Isom. Norfolka hasn't interacted with Isom yet. Who knows if that will change? Alpha Core haven't interacted with Isom, other than they looked at a picture of him. Who else? The assassin in the coming up next hasn't interacted with Isom. He hasn't even appeared. And what else? Oh, and Michael Copper and Lillian Ronashi have not interacted with Isom or the plot of Isom. So, yeah, that's a lot different than Spider-Man teaming up to take down Kingpin with Daredevil. Like, you're talking about a story.
You're talking about that's not a cameo appearance.
Another.
That's not a cameo appearance. When they team up, that is a collaborative book.
Okay, what are you talking
Spider-Man
about?
showing up in the middle of the one example I can remember.
What are you talking about?
Spider-Man showing up. So I've read, this was one of the first comics I read. It was the Fantastic Four's kids, and they're off on an adventure, and in the middle of it, Spider-Man runs out of web fluid, and he's falling from the sky, and the Mr. Fantastic's son, daughter, I don't remember. It's a terrible comic, but stretches out and saves him. That's the extent of their interaction, and then Spider-Man disappears and is not in the rest of the comic.
Well, at least
that is a cameo.
With the character.
That is a cameo.
Okay. So are you saying that all these are just random cameos?
These are cameos that introduce these characters. They're saying they're in the universe.
To introduce a character in a cameo is retarded because I'm sure that comic wasn't the introduction of Spider-Man. Everyone had the context of who Spider-Man was.
This is everything has to be the worst possible interpretation from you.
I don't think that is. I think I'm just saying that there's a very clear difference there.
All right.
Do you not see that?
Man, we are almost at 2 hours. Okay, I want to make sure that I do get this from you. So overall, you said Isom was bad. What would you rate the 3 books?
I would rate them. Are you ready?
Mm-hmm.
Zeros? A 1 for Isom number 1 out of 10.
Okay.
A 1 for Isom number 2 out of 10. And then for Alpha Core, I'd probably give like a 3 or 4 maybe.
Wow, you must have really high standards. And you said Hellboy was a good one? So what?
Hellboy's like a 9? A phenomenal comic. Yes, I recommend that to anybody.
And Alpha Core is a 3, and Hellboy is like a 9 or a 10?
Correct.
Okay, and did you read the Superman's son is gay comic?
Well, of course I'm a communist. No.
Okay. Have you read any of
Why did
Ironheart?
you even bring that up? Why?
I'm trying to get a scale of your what your scores are based on.
Did you read that comic?
So what? I'm just saying. Okay. Have you read any of Ironheart?
Why the hell would I?
Okay. Have you read any of the recent Batmans? Like the one?
No, because it was last run Tom King and then James Tynion. I'm not interested in that.
Okay. Okay, I'm trying to see if universally
I try not to buy
also receive
comics.
So if Isom is a 1, what other comics are a 1 for you?
Well,
no.
I saw this this comic posted on 4chan, and it was the Alan Scott Green Lantern, where he like hires a gigolo. And so I would say that might be worse, just in terms of destroying
How do you get worse
history.
than a 1? Is it a 0? Is it a 0.5?
No, it's like a -1.
No, okay, so your scale goes like -10 to +10?
What did you say?
Does your scale go from -10 to +10, or how does this work?
It actually goes from negative infinity to positive infinity.
Okay.
And
So you're just troll
across
answers
it.
that have no actual objective standard.
Do
Because
you not see how
you don't have an
maybe
objective
taking
standard
this
to
a
apply
little
to
too
comics.
literally, Tim?
You don't
For
have
one,
an
you don't
objective
even
standard
have a
to apply
scale. You
to
don't read
comics.
comics. You
What's
don't
the
have
point
like
of
a point of reference.
What is the point of saying it is a 1 if there's no? What does that 1 mean? It means nothing because I have nothing to compare it to.
Well, he's just saying
I'm
that
trying to
a
look
story
for
about a gay
what you would
Alan
consider
Scott Green
worse than
Lantern would be that
Isom. What would you
bad.
consider
Yeah.
better than Isom? So that way I know what that
Well,
one
I gave
means,
you
and you don't
Hellboy.
provide that.
Okay. If you want a genuine answer, I'll be nice and I'll give a genuine answer. I've read a lot of comics in the past month or so, crowdfunded, indies, Image, Dark Horse. Not from the big two because I don't give a shit about the big two.
Okay.
Superheroes, I'm not really into that. Good superhero stuff, it's different. But I would say I read a book called Ice Cream Man. It's a horror anthology by Image. I didn't care for it that much, but I could recognize that it wasn't necessarily poorly written. It just wasn't really for me. So I would score that about 4 or 5.
Oh, so much better than Isom. So you would recommend that over Isom?
Any day of the week, without a shred of trepidation in my mind, yes.
Okay.
And then
what about?
I read Department H. I'm reading through the omnibus right now of that, and the art is bad because it's done by the writer Matt Kint, and he's a writer, not an artist, but he does it in a stylized way with nice watercolors to look like a undersea research journal. So there's like an aesthetic to it. So I like it. I recognize it's not for everyone. So I would say that's probably like a 7. I read Alex Weisner, guy on Twitter, his Always with Honor adaptation. It's like a manga adaptation of a World War I and Russian Revolution generals' memoirs. And I would say that's like a 9 out of 10. Great art, great writing so far, great adaptation of a real life story. So I would highly recommend that. I think just about anyone could enjoy that. So that's kind of a scale. And then I've read some crowdfunded comics that I would rate like 2s and 3s and 4s. Generally speaking, it's a little dicier with the crowdfunding.
Yeah.
Okay. So what about like TV shows or movies or something that we would have that maybe we've both seen? Because the comics that you mentioned,
you haven't really read comics.
Yeah, so that's why I'm saying, is there something else that we can make a comparison here? TV shows, movies, music?
Music, I don't think that would play into.
It would need to be something that would be narrative.
Yeah. I don't watch. Did you watch Succession? You know the show Succession?
Unfortunately, no. That is on my list of shows to watch.
Well, that's my favorite show, I think, probably ever. It's a great show. It's very, very well written and acted. But again, I mean, you judge it by different things than you would judge a comic book. So it's shot plainly a lot of the times, whereas I would say comic books are more visually interesting. It's not comparable. This is why it's kind of like I've noticed a lot of fans don't really have a frame of reference when it comes to comics. I've seen a lot of them just say they've only read Isom, or maybe they read comics when they're way younger and only read Isom now. And so when I'm trying to talk to them about like, well, do you see like the pacing is off here? The art's like
the pacing seems pretty standard if you're familiar with how noir tales are generally slow burns, and so those are some of my favorite.
Pulp, Ed Brubaker's Pulp. I have it. I read a little bit of it. I haven't been able to read all of it. The whole thing, it's a neo-noir story, and it's told in like 68 pages, the entirety of it.
Okay.
You can tell stories in less inflated page counts.
And does it involve superheroes? And there's a world building to establish there.
Well,
or
there's
is
a
this
world building to it, but it's not supernatural world building. I don't think that's some kind of
is this a
special case
one-off
of that.
comic so it tells the entire story and it's not trying to, because this deal with the Rippaverse
So yeah,
is they are
it's a
establishing
standalone
an entire
story, but
universe.
yeah, but this is an arc. This is the first
Okay.
story arc, right? So it should be seeking to tell a story on its own.
Yeah. So all he needs to do is finish it by the third part of the story arc. And as far as I'm concerned, the way it's set up, finishing that story arc is figuring out what Darren is up to, why he needed man, I'm drawing a blank on her name. Why he needed Jasmine.
Don't worry, Eric.
What her role in that is, and then if the demons are somehow related, and I suspect that they are.
Yeah,
no,
Mr. X
Isom definitely is noir.
No,
it's neo-noir. That is the
not.
category. Yes, it is.
No, it's a superhero comic. I don't remember any neo-noir stories that go into like Hell Cave.
Okay, so the first one sets it up as a neo-noir. Now, number 2 is changing that.
What neo-noirs have you read? I'm curious.
Read, no, but I've watched. So this is
where what have you watched?
There's tons of them. Like Sin City was a fantastic movie. That is definitely neo-noir. And that's the entire setup. What?
It's based off a comic.
It's based off a comic, yes. But there's also Renaissance, which is with that is also neo-noir. That was Daniel Craig, and another great one from Daniel Craig is Layer Cake. That's similarly neo-noir. Almost anything from Guy Ritchie, although man, Wrath of Man was fantastic.
Okay, I was
Guy Ritchie
briefly.
Majority of his stuff is neo-noir.
I was unfamiliar with neo-noir before you mentioned it, so I looked up. Let me know if this is the correct definition. Neo-noir is a revival of film noir, a genre that originally flourished during and after World War II, literally translating to in the definition of film noir, dark film, both in lighting and sinister stories. Yeah. So that is the correct definition of neo-noir as well.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay, thank you.
It's generally dealing with characters that are vague. They're not morally correct or morally,
everything in Isom's vague. Yeah. So
it's morally ambiguous characters, but generally their actions at the end steer more towards being moral. Like one of the common tropes of a noir is, the grizzled detective who operates outside the law. They break the law to find the bad guy, but in the end, they're trying to find the bad guy. They're trying to catch the murderer or the rapist, so their means are not ethical, but they get ethical, their means aren't ethical, but the end goal of their journey is something ethical. And most of the time, or a lot of the time, they die and the bad guy gets away. And it's sort of, I was like, that's a common trope in noir. Neo-noir just usually takes those same kind of themes and applies them to a more modern setting where you've got morally ambiguous characters, but generally you're rooting for them because their goal is somewhat moral, even if the means of getting there are not.
Okay.
And usually they are slow burns. It is a lot of setup, a lot of getting the characters in place, and then at the end there is a lot of action. And so that's why when I'm reading Isom, that's kind of the picture I'm getting. Is like, yes, there's that skirmish with the demons in the Hell Cave, but that is kind of like a minor buildup. And then I'm expecting in book 3 for there to be this huge kind of gang war between Darren and Isom, and whether he gets allies or like Gooding or the Norfolka guys showing up, and there being this kind of bigger clash than what we saw in the Hell Cave. And that's kind of typical of what I would expect from an neo-noir. Like, it started off slow, it's building, it's putting all the characters in place, it's introducing all these characters. Some of them come together, others are just there because they're in the universe and they get filled out later. No.
Yeah, others are just there.
Yeah, others are just there. Like I said,
is it necessary for moral ambiguity in on the part of the protagonist?
It's not necessary, but it is common.
It's common.
Yeah, it's very common in noir and neo-noir.
So you would say if Isom is a neo-noir, then that's a subversion because correct me if I'm wrong. You're saying that Avery, he's morally aligned. He'd be a morally correct character, and that's a little bit of a twist versus the people who
No,
are usually
I
less
disagree
moral.
with that.
Okay.
I don't see him as a moral because it sounds like he's entering the situation begrudgingly.
Yeah.
Like he doesn't want he wanted out, they pulled him back in. That sort of setup. It also said like he also confirms he doesn't really care about Jasmine. He was just there like, hey, she's alive. She's not seemed to be in any immediate danger. Fine. Okay. Now the situation is me and Darren. That's he's
I don't care.
that's not a that is not a
neo noir.
okay.
Or not.
That is not a
I'm sorry, that was just
good position. That is not a morally morally good. That's not paladin lawful good.
This doesn't have to do with any of my criticisms on pacing. I understand slower pacing for slower stories, but when you're taking 6 pages of a guy cutting a promo that's irrelevant to the entire plot of the book, that's bad pacing. That's a bad allocation of your pages.
Because
that's bad.
So in the arc, he's not just telling the story of Isom. He is setting up the entire world that Isom lives in. Now, you don't like that, but other people like that. I enjoy that. I want this world to
see. I'm not even actually convinced.
It would strike me as weird if it was the other way around.
You seem like you really. I'm going to go on a limb here and say that you really like Eric July, like his politics. Are you
not particularly?
Are you libertarian? Are you like?
I am an anarcho-capitalist, but like I don't. Yeah, so I've seen Eric's videos, but I don't. He's not somebody I watch regularly.
Hear of the Rippaverse?
Through Friday Night Tights.
Okay, that makes sense.
So I don't watch them regularly either, but I saw them. Eric was on there, and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. I started watching some of his videos. I'm like, oh, another anarcho-capitalist, awesome.
Oh, so there is a political aspect of it, of like you want to support someone. I'm not saying that this is like a bad thing to want to support people who don't hate you and who share your views. You know, I don't want to give Marvel and DC my money because I know that people making those comics hate me. It's not really the same with independents. I mean, it's different. But I understand that. I'm just trying to get down to like, did you buy this because it was something that was really going to interest you, or is it more like that you want to support something coming from like your side?
I bought all 3 less than a month ago, or whenever they were doing the Alpha Core campaign, and I only bought them because people like you, or what's the other actual fandom, or some those bottom feeder guys were lying deliberately about what was in the book, and they were showing screenshots that were from.
I still don't know where I lied. Where did I lie?
All right. I mean, we can roll this back or whatever. Other people can look at the interview where you talked about the Norfolk guys being mutants.
I really don't think I said. I think what I was saying. Maybe you misheard
me.
Hang
on. Point 4 claims it was jarring to go from fighting a gang to taking on demons on Isom 2. The demons were foreshadowed in Isom 1 with Sam entering the security house, and then at the end with the guys from Norfolk speaking cryptically about a threat. Luke Cage doesn't handle interdimensional beings because he's strong and bulletproof, but that's it. He doesn't have super healing speed or anything that would make him able to take on interdimensional or cosmic threats. Isom has shown that he can heal from extensive injuries and that his powers might be more than just superhuman speed and strength.
Yeah. So I think Isom's powers may have a divine element to them. I don't think... I mean, granted, that's speculation on my part.
It's the crotch cross.
The crotch cross, as you call it, although it's a belt.
Dude, come on!
It's deliberately above his crotch.
Joke. You're acting like I'm like slandering by saying that. It's positioned above his crotch. It's kind of funny. That's something you can say. That's just kind of funny. That's not like a big deal.
Not really.
It's not.
It's. I don't find.
He's saying. I think he's saying he's not funny.
Oh,
yeah. Okay. You can find it funny if you want. I don't think that crotch cross is funny.
Okay, I just find it funny that they would position that in the position. It looks awkward to me. But
no, there are actual cod pieces that are in the shape of various objects.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. I don't think Isom is literally designed with a cod piece.
Yeah.
Although I think EBS did give him a bit of a camel toe during his review.
Oh, okay.
So I thought, which I think is funny. Did you watch that review, Tim? You know I'm referencing.
EVS talking about a camel toe on.
Yeah, he drew. He was very fun. It was on his.
He did a review of Isom
$4,000.
1 recently.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
And he scribbled in it, and he was making funny scribbles. That's
Okay.
referencing that.
Well, so yeah, I don't know what's going on with EVS. I think he's got a weird fetish for human animal, and that's what turned me off to Ninja Turtles.
Wait,
No, there's
what kind of accusation is that? Because
no, like it's overt
Cyberfrog?
in Cyberfrog, where there's supposed to be some kind of sexual tension between Cyberfrog and that girl, and I'm like, that's like
Have
that's
you
what
read
kind of was a
Cyberfrog?
turn off for Ninja Turtles with April O'Neil and the Ninja Turtles. Was like,
Have you
glad
read
that they finally.
Cyberfrog?
I
This is a big
I have-
accusation to throw around for. Did you read it?
Yeah, I read the Blood Honey and was not happy with that.
Did you actually read Cyber? I feel like you would have mentioned that when I asked you. Did you read any other modern comics? I feel like you would have been like,
Well,
yeah,
because
I
that's
read
not
Cyberfrog."
mainstream. That's an independent one.
So you bought Blood Honey?
I did not buy it.
Oh,
No.
well then, how
So-
did you read it?
Hmm?
How did you read it?
I don't know. There's a digital version of it, right?
You don't. I don't
It's like
believe.
it-
so.
no,
I
'cause
don't
I was
think
researching.
so.
Right?
Wait a
Sorry, what?
minute. Did you pirate Cyberfrog Blood Honey? Did you pirate it?
No, I have a digital copy of it. I don't know if it's pirated or not.
Oh wait, you don't know if you pay. I don't know about you.
No, I didn't pay for it. It
I
was
would know
free, so I'm not sure if it was
this
pirated or not.
beautiful piece
If it was worth the money, I would have put
of
I would pay for
Isom,
it.
this beautiful physical copy of Isom I have in my hands right now. I remember buying it. You
Okay.
don't remember buying Cyberfrog?
No, I did. I did not buy Cyberfrog, but
You
I know.
pirated it. Just admit it. Because right now you're lying. You're doing the same thing you accused me of doing, which was lying about Isom.
Okay.
You're lying about. Oh, I don't remember. I don't remember.
Prior to reading Cyberfrog for myself, there are various reviews of it online. I went through, I saw the images they were showing, I know the basic story of it. So then I was like, okay, I need to read the actual dialogue of it.
So you pirated it.
Yeah, I guess. Although that means something different for me as far as pirating it, but
What? So it's not
like based on what
pirating
you're
it
saying,
if you
yes.
download a copy digitally that you didn't pay for. That's not pirating.
No, I did not download it.
Okay, so you just viewed it online.
Yes, I viewed it online, read the dialogue.
So you streamed the comic.
Streamed?
Well, not streamed. Torrent it or whatever you.
Whatever. It
want
was
to
just
call
it was a
read
web
the
page,
scan.
and I scrolled through it, and as far as I can tell, that is the actual dialogue from the comic.
You say dialogue. You read the whole comic, right?
Not the entire comic. No, so the portion I'm talking about is his interacting, like the first interaction between Cyberfrog
You
and
just
what's
said
her
that you
face.
read Cyberfrog Blood Honey.
Yeah, that was from Blood Honey, right?
You seem to be hopping around this a lot, like almost like a little cyberfrog. You're hopping around,
Okay.
and again, like a cyberfrog, there's a lot of digital things, piracy.
Yeah, there is a digital version of Cyberfrog, and as far
I
as
don't
I'm
think
aware,
there is there, Mr. X?
Mhm.
Thank you for your comment. He says
Say what?
EVS, like Eric, doesn't really like digitals, to my recollection. So square that circle for me, good sir. I'm no fan of EVS, and even I know this.
okay.
Now,
So
I
it
don't know
wasn't-
about you,
so-
but I'm feeling like a noir detective
Make
right
X.
now, getting to the bottom
All
of the
right.
case.
So it was not my intention to not pay EVS for his work or anything like
It's
that.
not, yeah, you just have to
Okay,
fire.
so I was not aware he doesn't have a digital version or anything like that.
Mm.
As far as I know, it wasn't pirated, but there is a website that has it. And I scrolled down and read through it.
Wow, this is disappointing.
Yeah, okay. Disappointing how? I didn't share it with anybody.
So you think it's fine just to enjoy it if you don't share it?
Not enjoy it, because I did not enjoy it. Like I said, I'm not a fan
so it's
of the
okay to
bestiality
pirate
implied there.
comics if you don't like them.
Hmm? Well, I'm not going to pay money for something unless I think I'm going to enjoy it.
Did you
I knew
pirate
enough
Isom
about
before you bought it?
what?
Did you pirate Isom before you bought it?
No, but I've seen enough reviews. It's like, okay, this is either both positive and negative, and I'm like, okay, this is probably something I would spend my money to check it out. At the time that I read through Blood Honey, I was like, okay, this is not for me.
Okay.
So either way, EVS was not going to get my money. I thought it was a legitimate version. I was not aware that it was a pirated
You thought
version.
a comic that you read free online was legitimate. There's no way in hell. See, you could just have.
Okay, what do you mean there's no way in
to
hell?
admit
Because
it.
there are various comics that are available for free online in a digital version, and then people
So was
pay
this
for the
on
printed
like
version.
Ethan Van Sciver or cyberfrog.com, or was this on a scan site?
I'm not sure. It was a link in one of the videos on one of the reviewers.
Sure.
So there was somebody who reviewed it. They had a link to it, and I clicked on that link, and it had the whole comic. Or at least what I think was the whole comic.
Okay. Dude, you could just admit to it. It's not like me or Jared or anybody watching actually gives a shit. This is just you lying to like protect your reputation or not be embarrassed by it.
No, I mean, I have no
But
problem
it's not
with pirating.
Like we give a shit.
No, yeah.
So why don't you just own up to it? Your whole thing this entire
like, because
time
you accused me.
You thought
you said I pirated it, and I was like,
yes,
I didn't know.
You did. You literally did.
Okay, then.
Dude,
but you don't have a problem with that. I don't have a problem with that. So what's the point?
You don't have a problem with it?
No.
Really?
I do have a problem with sharing it when the person when the other person specifically said not to.
Oh,
like if
are you?
There's a big difference between
the last time when I scrolled to the relevant pages of what I was talking about.
Because you're showing the entire
you had
comic
a problem with that, but you pirate comics yourself.
No. So there's a difference between me reading it for myself just to make sure that it is exactly what the other people said about it.
You know what's actually funny? My use of it is actually more covered by fair use than what you did, because criticism is fair use. You can go to a
show the entire comic for anybody to read the whole thing.
I wasn't in control of what was on the screen or not. But I scrolled. I didn't like go through each individual page. I like clicked to the pages, scrolled as fast as I could.
Mm-hmm.
You don't think that's a little dishonest, framing it as I showed the comic when I was just going to the exact pages I was talking about?
You claim it's fair use. I claim it is not, because it is the entire thing. Like, you can take what you showed.
What I'm saying is, this isn't
you can take what you showed,
copyright,
read through that the entire way, and then not need to go buy the actual comic.
That would be very gay and boring. But I just find it ironic that you had such a problem with me doing that. And yet,
because you are the one
spent
distributing.
Like 20 minutes.
You are the one distributing
around the fact that you pirated Cyberfrog when you could have just said that you did it. Again,
I said I had a digital version of it.
But that's not honest. There's no digital version of Cyberfrog. You didn't pay for it.
Okay, I did not pay for it, and it was a digital version.
You're still not even owning up to it, dude.
What do you mean I'm still not on
issue, man?
If EVS did not make that a legitimate version, then what I had was a pirated version.
Even if let's play devil's advocate here. Let's say EVS did release a digital version. Someone's still uploading that, and you viewing it without paying for it. That's still piracy. Do you not understand?
Unless it was made available by him for free.
But that wasn't the case. You know that wasn't the case. This is just some kind of gay dance.
There are plenty of webcomics that are available for free. Like Order of the Stick does this. All of their webcomics are available for free, but they have printed versions that people buy.
You know that wasn't the case with Cyberfrog.
How do I know that was
this
the case?
Is very
how do I know that was the case?
Insulting that you think.
How do I know that was the case for Cyberfrog?
How? Because I can tell you're lying right now. Just like you wouldn't really admit how you
Well,
read
'cause-
it. You were jumped
So I said
around.
I read it in a digital version, and as you were saying it was pirated, I said I don't know if it was pirated.
Dude, this
Right?
is sad.
As far as I know, it was legit until you said that there were no legit, and I'm like, okay, then maybe what I read was not a legit version.
Again,
It was
like
a
I
link in
said,
one of the
I
reviews.
don't actually care. It's that I
Okay.
know you made such a big
So if
deal
you don't actually
about
care,
when I went to the relevant pages of what I was talking
because
about.
you were showing that to other people.
Yes, in
So
my
that is a difference.
criticism, I showed the pages I was criticizing.
No, you didn't just show clips or pieces of it. You showed it in its entirety. That is very similar to Mystery Science Theater 3000, where they show the entire movie and they're talking
This is
over
not
it.
Mystery Science.
So the reason they do
Theater
that is because they
3000.
actually license the product from the original source, or because they're public domain. But to do that in real life,
are you? I already asked if you're autistic, but like, do you realize the way that you're framing things?
there's a big
are
difference
dishonest.
between.
Like you're being very dishonest.
There's a
right
big
now.
difference between watching something that you did not pay for, that was made available for free.
No,
YouTube does this all the
okay,
time.
no, we're not saying that was made.
And there's a big
available
difference
for
between
free.
you taking that and distributing it for free.
Who made it available for free, Tim? It wasn't the guy who made it.
I don't know. So the person responsible is the one who made it available for free.
This is sad.
I didn't make it available for free.
Sad, man.
The individual who scanned it and made it available for free, they have a beef with EVS, and he has a claim to stop them from doing whatever they're doing.
This is pathetic.
But you
man.
taking Isom's comics and showing the entirety of the comic like you did is different from me viewing it for myself to make sure that it is.
For
that
one,
I was
I
not
don't
misled.
believe that I showed the entirety. At least what I was trying to do is scroll to relevant pages.
The
For
creator
two,
of and the content.
in this, in you know the debate about it, I'm pretty sure Jared said go to the campaigns of AlphaCore. Go. He plugged where you can buy it.
Okay.
There's no intent. I don't. For one, I definitely don't think anyone's going to that debate to try to capture the frame by frames to read Isom. It's very clearly just showing the exact points I'm talking about. So people read
that's
or
not
watching.
In the last interview, the last debate, you scrolled through the entire thing. Every page was visible.
Okay.
Yeah. So that was you making all of that.
And you have a big problem with that?
I have a problem with somebody making it available when
you
it's
have a problem with that, but you pirate other things. You not see the how that's like incongruent.
The person making it
benefit
available
off
is
that
in the wrong.
because you pirate other comics, but then
the person making it available is in the wrong.
Point. That's
if something is available for free, the person taking advantage of the free thing is not violating anybody's property rights. The person making it available
like a libertarian talking point? Dude,
no, that's
you
the
are
problem.
Totally dancing around. Jared, sorry the debates kind of derailed into this, but I just find this rich. That you had such an issue with me scrolling to the pages I had.
Me reading through EVS to understand what the comic or Cyberfrog's Blood Honey, to understand the full context of the comic for a comic I was never going to pay for, so that way I could talk about what was in it.
Going to pay for it ever. Doesn't that make it worse?
What? No, why would I pay for it?
Benefiting off EVS's labor with no intention to ever pay him.
How would I benefit off of that?
Clearly you read it for a reason, so you wouldn't be doing
because I wanted to make sure that people were not lying about it the same way that I see them making up false claims about AlphaCore and Isom.
You keep saying that, making up false claims, and you accuse me of doing
that. There are things that you said in the last debate that
the only
I
one
commented
here being false and dishonest is you when I confronted you about how you read Cyberfrog.
Okay.
And you're still dancing around it.
Okay.
To
for
an
the record,
degree,
I pirated
for something
Blood
that no
Honey.
one gives a shit.
For the record, I pirated Blood Honey. I watched reviews for it where they go through every page and they detail the
Your
exact
Honor,
outline
we
of
got him. Lock him up.
Okay.
This is like the end of A Few Good Men, y'all. You're damn right, I did.
Yeah, there's
What's,
no dancing around that. At the time, I was not aware that it was not publicly available, or that it should not be publicly available.
Yeah, I'm pressing X to doubt right there. I don't believe
Okay.
that for a second.
What's
You can press X all
what's
you
something else that you feel like Sam lied about in the previous debate?
Oh, okay. I guess where is the previous debate? Like in the notes there. Okay,
Let me
Mr.
go
X.
back
Yes,
over
it
here.
took me 20 minutes, even though I admitted it several times. And okay.
No, you kept
You can go
saying
fuck
gay
yourself.
ass like, oh, well then I guess I did, or I didn't know.
Like
it
I
was a
said,
digital.
As far as I knew, it was a legitimate digital copy until you pointed out there was no such thing.
You knew off the bat it wasn't legitimate.
Yeah, so I'm a liar, so you can't trust anything I said in this debate.
Here's something.
Hey, why are we having this? We just wasted 2 hours.
You
I'm
are a liar. You are lying.
Liar in one thing, liar in all things. You can't trust anything I say. So this entire debate is pointless. Thank you for your time. You know what? Nothing I said. No one should listen to anything I said. I'm a fucking notorious liar.
Are you rage quitting right now?
I'm a liar. Why should you trust anything? I lie about everything. Why should you trust me in anything I said? And anything is legit. Did I ever fucking buy comics in the 90s? Was I ever a fan of X-Men? Nope. That's all fucking lies. Everything I've said this entire debate is a fucking lie. That is the only reasonable thing that you can determine from, hey, if I'm willing to lie about that, I'm willing to lie about everything. Either I was telling the truth and I wasn't, and when you brought up that it was a piracy, I was uncertain about whether it was or not, because
that's a lie again. You knew.
Okay, then everything I say is a lie.
Why are we dancing around it still?
Okay, you can say everything that you said is 100% the truth. Nothing you have ever said is a lie, and everything I say is a lie.
Yes,
that's the only thing that anybody watching this can determine.
Yes.
So, all right. Do you want to continue to debate with a liar? Because I'm just going to lie about everything. I've lied about everything so far.
I was going to bring up
question first.
I was going to bring up one other thing.
Fucking hell,
because you referenced back to the notes.
Because
I was talking to you about, this was 2 weeks ago, and this is after the whole debacle that involved people going to like the grave and everything. And during that time, because Sam and I started talking on the Fund My Comic Discord. That's how I started talking to him in the first place. And
so it's okay for him to stream something else that is specifically told that it should not be that I was specifically made aware that this should not be available for streaming. This is copyright infringement. So it's okay for him to do that, but it's not okay for me to do mine. Yeah.
You realize I'm not making a moral judgment. I was pointing out hypocrisy, and I was pointing out how.
No, it's perfectly fine for you to do what you do, and that doesn't make you a liar or a cheat. But I'm a liar.
No, because I didn't lie.
I am a confirmed liar.
That's not where I was going with any of that setup. Where I was going with it was that we were talking about he and I, Sam, were talking about how messed up it was that the gravesite visit happened and how it was taking things too far. Sam actually, and this was just a private conversation, so like I don't have receipts for this, but but we were talking about it, and I was actually wondering if Eric had acted differently towards the people who were, I think harassing him.
What?
Pardon?
No, sorry. Yeah, keep going. Sorry.
Yeah. So I asked Sam, I asked him rhetorically. I said, I wonder if he had acted differently, if the reaction would have been less strong or less severe. And Sam actually didn't think so. Sam actually was very, very on July's side and saying that it doesn't really matter how he acted, that he thinks that the people that were acting in bad faith would have continued to act in bad faith and they would have escalated no matter what. And so when you and I were talking in the comments a couple weeks back, I brought that up, and I said I don't regard Sam as a hater of Eric, and I said I think he's a hater of Isom, but like not Eric as a person. And you said that you doubted that, and that you think that his support of Eric was like feigned sympathy and support. Do you think that's the case?
Yes. So, what anybody listening to this, whether you believe I'm a liar and lying about everything.
That
my impression of Sam,
you would assume that I would be lying about that in like a private conversation with someone else. Yet when I say
because of you're
lying about whether you knew a comic was pirated, that's like extreme.
Okay. So based on your reaction and your interpretation, your bad faith interpretation, you always take
It's not bad
the
faith. None of this was in bad faith.
Yes, it
If
is.
I read the fucking book.
It is bad faith. You take
No, it's not.
Okay, there isn't a possible reasonable explanation you can come from this. It has to be the worst possible interpretation of the events depicted in the book. You take the dialogue and you don't piece the pieces together. No. Hey, they didn't expressly spell this out for me. It's bad writing. This doesn't have any bearing on the main central story, even though it's important for setting up this world as independent and not everything revolves around Avery. So this is a living, breathing world with multiple characters, with multiple story arcs that will be, or that may or may not be picked up on later by other issues or other series that get created. No, all of that, you take the worst faith interpretation of it as this is unnecessary and it's just page filler. It provides nothing.
I think there was a lot of page filler. I mean, you just look at the excess use of splash pages. It's classic way to decompress a story. I mean, what do you say about that? There's like
I say that is on Cliff Richards, and I am not a fan of Cliff Richards.
It's not. That's not how you script it. You a writer scripts where splash pages should be placed.
Yes.
So that wouldn't be on Cliff Richards.
No, Cliff Richards is everything else as far as the panel layouts and the art or the sketching, and
he doesn't affect the pacing of the book. You realize that, right?
Well, I don't want to intervene one way or the other, but from me and my experience, because I'm working on a comic, I'm another one of the millions of people that's trying to do that. With my experience working with my artists, I've typically laid out, what I think that they should do here. I think your splash page should be here, and they'll give me layouts and then they'll give me pencils, but I do have the final approval, and I can say, okay, redraw that, or let's do that differently. So I don't want to say I don't want to put all the blame on Cliff or all the blame on Eric. I think that it would be collaborative for both of them. Don't you think?
Okay. Possibly. I mean, I've never written a comic. I'm not.
And again, I'm not trying to debate. That's just been my experience as
It makes sense that it is a collaboration between the two of them.
Yeah. Okay.
It's kind of funny though that you're like willing to throw Cliff Richards under the bus here. To me, it doesn't really matter whose fault it is. Just that it's bad. Your instinct seems to be to go to like defend Eric. I'm just
because Cliff Richards. So I looked up his name or whatever, and I looked at some of his other artwork, and I'm like, man, this guy has never been very good at what he's doing. All the other projects that his name is associated with, the art in general is just kind of mediocre.
Yep.
So I haven't seen anything from Cliff Richards that strikes me as, wow, that's incredible, or man, this guy is good.
And Eric also hired him.
It seems like he's adequate.
Yeah, it was Eric's choice to hire him too.
Yeah. And how many other options did Eric have at the time when he greenlit the project for Isom?
Oh, fucking probably 50.
Sure. If you say so.
Well, if he invested as much money as he said, I would think he'd have a lot of options.
Well, not only that, but you gotta think, Jared, how many people in Comicsgate would have been willing to draw for him? Like, there's a great amount of good artists in that sphere.
That aren't already involved in their own projects?
I'm sure at the time there would have been some that were in lulls, or I mean, I severely doubt Cliff Richards was his only option. I think that for one, it's not even like that. He was a Comicsgate guy. He came from a Brazilian art thing.
You make sure you tell me when your comic is ready, X. I'll back you, man. You've been awesome to me.
All right,
appreciate you.
No, but I'm going to piggyback off what Jared said earlier when you were saying that you think that bad intentions. Tim, I didn't have anything against Eric at the beginning. I thought that he was just a guy who wrote a comic that was bad. And I thought I saw everyone saying the comic was good, so I read it myself. And I'm like, do these people read the same comic I did? This is horrendous. But I didn't really have an opinion about Eric other than I thought he seemed like a nice guy. And then I saw a lot of people coming after him, going after, the grave site, which I thought was in very poor taste. I thought a lot of people were taking it far. I think, cheering on the charity lawsuit thing. I thought that was ridiculous. And so my opinion on Eric had been neutral to positive. even up to that debate that I did earlier, my opinions on him have greatly changed because I've seen the way he interacts with other aspiring writers. His interaction with Aaron, so you did Immortal Rising. I think he was a complete asshole to Aaron, and in my own interactions with him on Twitter, he came off as an asshole. And yeah, my opinion on him is sour to the point where I don't like the guy personally. I think that he's a douche. But that actually doesn't influence any of my opinions of the books. Like, I can think Mark Waid's a shitty person, but a good writer.
All right.
Okay.
So
you said that.
So
you didn't
you're claiming that nothing about your claims that Isom is bad is related to your impression of Eric first.
Correct. Now, I don't 100% correct.
I don't buy that claim because
I don't buy.
So this is what I said at the beginning.
Cyberfrog was fired.
This is what I said at the beginning. Is your criticisms of Isom are not the same as the criticisms you would apply to other forms of media.
They are 100% the same. And I've
you criticize
Jared about other comics I've read and criticized, and I go through the same things. I go through art, characters, story, pacing, and what's the other art and dialogue. Those are like the 5 aspects of the comic that I look at where I judge it. And I've gone through, I don't know how many comics of Jared's, ones I've liked and ones I haven't. And I consistently apply those same standards.
That's what you claim, but then when I offer,
it's not what I claim, it's the reality.
When I asked you for an objective standards on what you would rate the books, you rated them as 1s, and then you rated some other book as a negative. So your entire review process apparently wasn't followed because.
Well, I mean,
kidding me, Tim? He
hasn't read. You asked him if he's like on books that he hasn't read. I think he was joking, and I don't want to just defend Sam, but like the gay Green Lantern Alan Scott book where he hires a prostitute. Obviously,
every super modern
that's going to be.
Gay.
That's not going to be like a book that anyone's going to rate particularly high unless they just like. They want to push
unless they like fan fiction,
something gay. So like it's not like that. I don't think that you should take him saying it's a negative 10 or whatever. That's not him being like super duper serious. Like I think his serious scores were probably the Hellboy and everything, right?
Yeah, those exactly were.
Yeah.
And you know what, if I'm being honest about the Green Lantern book, the art is 10,000 times better than Cliff Richard's. It's actually kind of sad to think that the artist is saddled with a book like that. So it's not even like I can say, well, that one's like totally worse than Isom, because there is an aspect objectively I can look that's better. And again, I said -1.
Yeah, awful books can have good art. That's true.
I mean, the big 2 are full of that. The big 2,
that's for sure. Yeah.
Except they're dropping like flies now. They're all going to their own projects.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I'm not a fan of Cliff Richard's art style or his.
Okay, we're not talking about the art style. I'm giving an example.
Okay, just specifically about the writing. You think Eric is a terrible writer, even though this is his second comic. Yeah, because he's written all of 2. Now, when you compare this to first versions of other stories, man, like I
have you read the first works of any other writers, Tim? Because you're saying
you mean like first comics from people.
So like
to clarify?
I said, first drafts or first versions of comics or introductions. Yeah, so you go back to the original comics, like the introduction of Spider-Man, the introduction of Superman.
Okay.
Ooh, those are a chore to read through. Even the original Luke Cage, even though I like the overall character. Man, those are a chore to read through. If you're talking about comics from the 60s and 70s, they are very bad at writing stories, and what carried them through.
I don't think so. I think they're a chore to work through because there's a shit.
Because they're badly written. They're not well thought out.
I don't think you're going to get many people agreeing with you that Isom's better than the Silver Age.
As a first attempt, yes.
No. Like, just no.
Well, so again, I want to ask for clarification to make sure I understand. When you say, Tim, to clarify, you said like first draft, but like because we don't see the first draft. We haven't even of Isom, we didn't see the first draft. We saw the final draft because that's what he presented. That's
Was
the
there
final.
more than one draft?
What I
I'm
mean
pretty sure he
is
said
the
there's only,
first
like, one
introduction
draft.
of
So so like a first issue.
Yeah, because there are retellings of the origin stories, or there are reboots of series, and the reboots are often done with more intention. They know where the story's going. They have a chance to clean things up. Anytime something is rebooted or turned into a different format, every time it gets a little more polished. It gets a little.
Thank you for clarifying.
Better.
I got you.
That's what I'm talking about.
I got you.
And this happens all the time when anime gets converted or manga gets converted to anime or into live action stuff. They polish things up. They give a better version of it. Like
I think a lot of manga fans would disagree with that pretty heavily. Look at the Death Note.
It depends. It depends on which anime and which manga and which live action.
I'm pretty sure most agree the live actions are abominations, with the exception of that One Piece show.
One Piece, the anime or the manga, the original, like the first bit of that story arc that's covered in the live action is pretty terrible. And then it gets a little bit better in the anime version, but not much. And then the Netflix version, it's like, okay, they got rid of a lot of the dead weight. They simplified things. They brought things together. It's a much cleaner interpretation of that story arc.
You got rid of the dead weight of the story, like side characters that don't do anything. It's very, very curious that you say that that's a better story.
Side characters that are introduced and then don't go anywhere. Okay. So in One Piece, there are side characters that are introduced that either get defeated easily, and they were merged into single characters in the live action One Piece adaptation.
This is sounding familiar.
But in Isom, Yaira is not a side character that's going to be merged with Valdez. And Brian isn't some
Can we not talk about the adaptations, because I really do think that misses the force.
So what I'm saying is,
because we aren't talking about like an adapted work, we're talking about a comic.
So I'm
book,
saying
I'm using comic
the first version, and even if you look back at the first version of One Piece, the original story art was even worse than what became the original One Piece, because it was something, I forget what it was called, and they came out with they shared what the original story arc was, and it was much worse than what actually ended up being in the manga. But
so you're saying their first draft was that's not a shot.
Yeah. So that's the process. And the first version that gets printed or whatever, and this is a more polished first version of something.
No, it's
that's
not.
What I was saying.
It's just not.
Okay. I mean, you can have that opinion, I guess, but it's not an objective standard.
But that's you gotta see how you're stating your opinion, and I'm saying my opinion, and then you're going,
no.
I guess you can have that opinion. Well, yeah,
you can have that opinion, and your opinion would be objectively wrong, because again, if you look, if you look at first versions of introductions of characters, majority of the popular characters that are around today, Batman, his first introduction, Superman, his first introduction, like I said, Luke Cage, his first introduction, there is very little story. The dialogue is horrid, but the character endured and got better over time.
Like flabbergasted.
Compared to that, this is a better first introduction of a character.
Dialogue and Isom's good. Based off what standard?
Better than average. I said I gave it a 7.5. Now, if I was rating the first introduction of Superman and the dialogue and just the writing, not talking about the illustrations or anything like that, that would probably be closer to a 3 or a 4.
Have you read Action Comics #1?
Like, not recently, but I mean, like I said, 20 years ago is when I was getting involved in most of
I don't think you have read Action Comics #1. I think that you're basing this off just
in Action Comics #1, Superman couldn't even fly. He was jumping over, but
so tall buildings in a single bound.
His abilities were not well defined. He was doing things.
Actually, that is defining his ability, saying that he can jump over a building.
That one ability
because they changed.
There was a whole. There were so many superpowers that he could just do whatever he wanted.
Change his face.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had a lot of
He-
wacky powers.
Yeah, there was no limit to his power. There was no kryptonite. All of
Have
that was
you, be
introduced
honest
later.
with
The
me, Tim?
first,
Have you
the first-
actually read Action Comics #1?
Yes, I actually. Okay, so I know. I think like I didn't have an original print, but I had a
Well, yeah.
reprint copy of it.
If you had an original
Actually,
print, you would be rich.
No, it's like yeah, they gave the recopies of it when they had the Death of Superman event. You could
Okay.
get they had little.
Have you read the origin stories of like any other superheroes?
Batman? Batman, Luke Cage, Superman. I've also read like I don't think I actually owned that. I think I borrowed somebody else's copy for Spider-Man's origin. I was aware of Wolverine's introduction, but I never read that one myself.
So you're basing this off of 4 comics.
That's what
you
and I'm
read
saying
20 years ago.
Yeah, and I'm saying their introduction was done very poorly, and the dialogue in those were reflective of their time. Oh, Captain America.
Thing.
I read the original Captain America.
Can I ask a very specific question along the lines of your point? In the case of like Wolverine, because that's one I actually did read, the origin of Wolverine. I had the craziest. I don't know how many people had this, but I had like a CD that had comics on it, and it was like an official Marvel disc that you could pop. It's a CD-ROM you put in your computer, and it had like the X-Men on it. And so one of the bonus comics, you could click on it when you got to Wolverine in the comic, you could read his origin comic with Hulk. So I actually read that one when I was a kid, so I remember a lot of that one. So
I mean, technically that wasn't his origin; that was his introduction.
Okay, so his introduction.
His origin was Weapon X program and all that.
Right. So, so what would for Wolverine's introduction, where was he reintroduced that you think was a better adaptation or a better introduction for Wolverine than his introduction? Because I know that one, or at least I thought I did. What like so just kind of.
Oh no, sorry. You were he asked me which origin stories have I read.
Right. I was just wondering, have you seen other introductions of Wolverine that you would say were better than that one? I was just curious.
Like,
I mean, if you haven't, it's no big deal. If you did.
As far as introductions, I'm trying to remember if they had a really cool introduction of X-Men outside of just the opening animation. I don't think they did. But that was my first introduction to.
I think he's talking about like comic books. Am I off base there, Jared?
No,
because like there's because I remember how he was introduced in like Ultimate X-Men, for example.
So
some other stuff like that.
So for me, since I was not aware of Wolverine's introduction in the Hulk comic originally, so like I said, I got started watching the original X-Men, and then I learned about it later and went back and started reading the comics for X-Men. But for me, the better introduction of Wolverine's power was when he actually was on Sinister's Island, and all the other X-Men had lost their powers. And I was always under the impression that Wolverine's powers included his claws. And that was the first time I was like, wait a minute. They took away his powers. He still has his adamantium skeleton. That is awesome. If that was my first introduction to the character, that would have been like that was my first realization of, oh, there's more to him than same thing with Rogue. At first I was like, oh, she can fly and she can, punch. She's basically like Superman without the laser eyes. And then it's like, oh, she has this other power. So for me, Sinister's Island was a much better, and I was like, after that, I was a real big fan of the character of Wolverine. So that was my first, I was like, oh, holy crap, this guy is awesome. Even without his superpowers, and even though he's in pain and he's, cutting himself open and he's bearing through it, and he goes and saves the whole team. And I was like, that was awesome. Cool. That was a much better introduction of, this is who this character is. It's when they're pushed to their extreme sort of thing. But
thank you for indulging my question. I appreciate that.
Okay. All right. But just so you know, that was a lie, because I lie about everything, apparently. Fucking hell.
Okay. I didn't say that. But...
yeah, no, that's you lie about one thing.
He thinks that all Indians accuse people of being liars.
You're not even Indian, dude.
Oh, really? What do you think this face is on my profile picture?
Really?
This is clearly me. I'm a 52-year-old Indian man.
No.
Coming at you live from Mumbai, baby.
Yeah. See, that right there, like, and Jared's laughing because he knows it's not true.
He knows it's true. He can't believe that you're doubting. He cannot believe you're doubting me.
All right, dude. That's
what's wrong? Yeah, we can't push troubles there. All
right.
Oh, y'all, gosh.
Yeah, so you think I'm lying, Tim?
Yeah, I don't think that's really you. Just like you're not a
you know what? I don't think
that's
fan. Really you and your
no, that's definitely me.
I think
people,
if I go
people in your sphere
take that mask off your face, I think we'll see you're really Eric July.
Oh, okay.
I want to assure you, we do not have a sphere. We are extraordinarily small. We are not on anyone's radar.
So,
no one
so the
talks
people
to us.
that you align with.
I don't align with anyone, man. What do you mean align with?
So you just happen to come across this comic and then have the same talking points as other people who seem to hate Eric July. I know the people that you were talking about going to the gravestone and were cheering on the.
So because I have the same opinions of them of a comic that I read and presumably they read, that means I'm in their sphere.
So you don't agree with them on anything else other than you dislike Isom and you think it is a 1 out of 10.
Correct. I mean, I don't know the opinions of all these people on other things. So
man,
why would I?
So you've never seen Ghost World or read Ghost World? Like, okay, no other forms of entertainment have you ever given a rating on? Because that's what I was trying to get at earlier. And
what is this coming from? Where's this coming?
I am looking for, if this is a number 1, what else do you think is a number 1? Or what do you think of comics that are absolutely atrocious?
There's been a couple crowdfunded comics recently that I think would be around the level of Isom.
So you don't have anything that is common, like Star Wars and like the original prequel trilogy, or anything that is something a lot of people would have in common.
I'm younger, so I grew up with them.
Sam, what would you rate The Force Awakens out of 10?
The Force Awakens itself, I would say probably is about 4. I think after Last Jedi, the context, you have to give the context of the rest of the trilogy, in which case that's a -1, I would say.
What would you rate The Last Jedi?
Wow.
You know what? To be completely honest, I haven't been able to stomach the whole thing. So I think I want to see the whole thing before I gave an official rating on that. But
okay, so Tim, he gives it a 4, and then if you take the context, he says
okay. So Last Jedi, or sorry, no, The Force Awakens.
Force Awakens
is 4 times better than Isom.
I don't think that's really how ratings work, but. Sure.
I mean, if it's a scale of 1 to 4,
I would say The Force Awakens in terms of things like dialogue, in terms of things like at least building characters somewhat, having a coherent. Now, mind you, I'm not saying that this is good, right? I'm saying that the things it does. Again, it's weird because we're comparing it to a comic. I'm judging a comic on things like art and pacing, which are different. I mean, movies have pacing, but it's a different thing that I'm using.
And Force Awakens, you hated that they brought in Han Solo and that they showed Luke Skywalker's lightsaber and the character that had it. You hated all of that.
Did I hate that there was Han Solo in the movie?
Yeah.
I hate how they reversed his character progression from the original trilogy.
And you hated that Leia was there and had no real impact on the story, but she was just for...
Actually, yeah, I think that she had no impact on the story and that it was cheap, like, nostalgia bait. And then use her well for the story.
And when they showed Luke Skywalker's lightsaber and, that's a story for another time.
Yeah, it was a member berry with the story for another day. It wasn't good.
But even with that didn't bring it down to a 1 for you.
Well, there's other aspects of a movie. I thought the music of The Force Awakens, I still actually listened to some of it because John Williams is a great score.
Yes,
I think, generally speaking, the acting was pretty good in the movie. I know there's a couple characters I don't think are well acted, but Adam Driver's a good actor for as much as you might dislike Kylo Ren as a character.
He did a good job acting as Kylo Ren. Yeah, I agree with that. He was written terribly, but he acted well.
The visual effects and in particular the sound design
and the lens flares.
And well, that's cinematography. I'm talking about VFX. And I'm talking about sound design. And you're throwing out these little things like, oh, and this doesn't bring it lower than Isom. I'm not saying that I like it.
I'm just saying
that there's aspects of it that I can see are objectively, at the very least, passable. Now, the writing, I think, is really bad. I think the plot is really bad. And I think the way that it's a sequel, it fails as a sequel at the heart of it. And I think the characters fail a lot.
I think, yeah. So I don't know how you can give that a 4 and then give Isom a 1 because that was very, very bad fan fiction. I actually have seen fan fiction about Star Wars that is just better overall special effects.
You realize 4 is not a 4 out of 5? It's a bad score.
Yeah, it's a bad score, and I don't see how that is. How Isom is so much worse than The Force Awakens.
Well, I just gave you examples. Again,
and then,
talking about. Do you understand?
And if I'm not mistaken,
it's not the same as a comic.
Yeah,
book,
you said The Last Jedi was a -1, but no, I understand. Oh, really?
He said with the context of everything
else. It's not the same as movie pictures on a screen. Holy fuck! You just blew my mind, dude.
I was also doing something.
Hey, did you realize that words written down on a page are not the same as words spoken? Holy crap, dude! Did I just blow your mind? Fucking hell, dude.
Actually, how about this? Because you both read Alpha Core. So, Sam, what would you give Alpha Core?
I would give it a 3 out of 10.
Really? So it's still worse than The Force Awakens. Alpha Core.
We're judging a comic book versus a movie. I think amongst comic books, it's a 3 out of 10. Yeah.
So Alpha Core didn't have any side characters that were introduced just to flesh out the world that didn't have any impact on the story. They didn't have any filler pages. They didn't have large splash pages that were just there to.
I would say that they overdid the splash pages at the end. They had like two big spreads back to back, which I thought was a little unnecessary. The pacing of it was all right. I feel like it was a bit too formulaic with the bad guys send an accept, and then there's a fight, and then they send another one, and then they send another one. It's like, okay, are we going to get to the end of this? There's not really a resolution to the story at all. The characters are paper thin. To the point where I know multiple people got Braxwell's name wrong because he's barely in it. And we learn nothing about them. There's not even hints really about them. I walk away, Alfcor, saying, well, it's not the worst thing I ever read, but there's clearly no passion behind it in either the art or the writing. And it's not interesting. It's just boring. So I would describe him.
Okay, so Chuck Dixon, you're not a fan of anything he's ever written outside of
this is the only thing of Chuck Dixon's that I've read. I've heard that his Conan the Barbarian novels are good, and I think he did Conan comics, and I plan to go back to read those because I'm planning on reading some Conan stuff. So I'll tell you whether or not I like those.
So, but Chuck Dixon, in your opinion, he's a 3 writer, and Eric is a 1 writer.
Alpha Core is a 3 book, and Isom's a 1 book. I can't say that because I haven't read anything more from Chuck Dixon. Do you understand that? I'm rating a piece. If you take Steven Spielberg's worst movie and then say he's a 1 director, you're going to get a weird view of Steven Spielberg.
Wait, so you're saying Alpha Core is Chuck Dixon's worst book?
Tim, do you understand the words coming out of my mouth? I said if you take the worst of some, I don't know. I don't have a frame of reference for his work. I only have a frame of reference for other comics that I've read.
And you're saying Alpha Core is that much worse than other comics?
Yes.
That's hard to believe.
Why? You don't read any comics?
Not recently.
Then you don't have a frame of reference.
I have a frame of reference from the Silver Age of comics in the 1990s.
Okay, well, I'm mainly reading modern, and compared to the modern, it's a 3 out of 10.
Like that?
How does that shock you so much? Why are you so baffled that someone could dislike something?
No, it's not that someone could dislike something. It's that, okay, when people talk about great comics, they talk about
Hellboy.
No. Hellboy's not even.
Literally,
No,
yes,
they talk
that's
about
one of the
Frank
most-
Miller's Batman Begins. They talk about.
Oh, you're just giving the most generic
Right.
list now.
No.
You know, Watchmen.
They-
Killing Joke.
yeah.
Okay.
They talk about those. These are the pinnacle. These are 10 out of 10 comic runs.
What's your point?
And one of those is where Bane is introduced and breaks Batman's back. And if I'm not mistaken, that is
Nightfall by Chuck Dixon and Graham Nolan. Yeah.
Graham Nolan and Chuck Dixon. Yeah.
Yeah. Google that.
Yeah. No. That's why I brought it up, is because it's Chuck Dixon.
Okay, I haven't read that.
Okay. So those are
What's your
comics
point?
that I am familiar with, and those are fantastic. And you're saying, so people who know comics and people who review comics, they talk about those as being some of the best of the best. And in Frank Miller's Daredevil run, they talk about those as, yeah, these are
I have
awesome. You got to
read
check this
parts
out.
of that, man.
These are things that are
is
highly recommended in the
good.
comic book
That's some
world.
pretty fun.
You know what's
stuff.
not recommended? Anything within the last 10 years. You
That's
can go to a
not
comic
true.
book shop and you can ask, hey, what's hot? What's a really good thing that can get, I can get from my nephew or whoever I want to get into comics. You know what they refer to you to? They refer you to like the ones that I just mentioned. They will talk. Oh,
For one,
like,
yeah, there are some evergreen books, but Walking Dead, that was the past 20 years. That was incredibly popular.
okay.
I've never read it. I don't know. I'm sure it's woke or whatever, but I know a lot of people like Saga.
No.
A lot of people like Why the Last Man. There's a lot of indie comics. If you're talking from the big two, which seems to be the frame of reference you're drawing from, even then there's stuff like Old Man Logan and Civil War. I used to work at a comic book shop. Civil War was easy to suggest to people. Mind you,
Civil War is a good one.
When the movie came out, but like but there was more than that. There was still like Warren Ellis's Moon Knight run was really good, and that's something that I would suggest to people because I read Warren Ellis's Moon Knight run, and it was really good.
Wasn't the Matt Fraction Hawkeye run well regarded?
Yes, it is. I never read that though. David Aha, I think that's how you pronounce his name.
Yeah.
And Matt Fraction.
Okay.
Ed Brubaker's
and those are within the
Iron
past 10
I know
years.
a lot of people like that.
Yep.
Dan
I'm pretty sure.
Abnett.
No, The Walking Dead was not past 10 years. I can.
Well,
the only one that
20
might have
years.
been within the
20
past 10 years
right?
would have been the Moon Knight run because I'm not familiar with.
Wait,
that
hold
one.
on. You said 20, right?
Didn't I say 10?
I thought you said 20. 10 years. I would say.
I thought he said 10. But
well, then I misheard.
Okay.
I would still say Moon Knight. I mean, that's
okay.
fast.
So Moon Knight was in the past 10, and that for you is not a 3 or a 4 or a 5. That's probably.
I would say that's
7 or 8.
An 8, about 8 or 9. I mean, there's not really an. It's kind
and is
of.
Is it a one
isolated
comic or is it a
stories.
series?
It's a run. It's 6 issues, I believe.
Okay.
Declan Shalvey and Warren Ellis, I want to say.
Okay. So that run, and you're not judging that by a single comic, but the entire series.
By the entire run of that creative team, the engine wasn't as good after.
So
it's just 6 issues, not a lot.
Is it a fair comparison?
It's very brief. You can read it in a day.
Is it a fair comparison to compare that 6 issue run with Alpha Core #1? Like, was there a single issue? Are there similar length in pages?
Well, it would be equivalent to about 4.5 of the 6 issue run. So, I mean, it's not that far off page count wise.
Okay. And that's an 8, and Alpha Core is a 3.
Correct.
Okay, and the ones that I mentioned, Frank Miller. Well, almost anything from Frank Miller. Right. Year 1, his Daredevil
run.
Don't
get your point here.
So what I'm trying to find where there's an overlap in our perspective, because right now you've mentioned a bunch of things that I don't have a barometer myself on whether that's good or not. So far the only thing we have in common is that Last Jedi, and you said it's not fair to compare a movie with comics.
Force
What about his reasoning for why Alpha Core is a 3? Like, can you see where he's coming from, or do you think he's like wrong? Like, what's some of the reasoning
I'm thinking
behind your scoring Alpha Core a 3, Sam?
What's my reasoning?
Yeah, just kind of go over that again. And
paper thin characters. The plot is boring with you only really see stakes at the end.
Let's look at that's a great way to start there. Let's start with characters. So Tim, what did you think of the characters of Alpha Core?
So like I said, I don't think they're as paper thin as he's describing. I think enough of their personality comes through in the dialogue. You see that Brian is an ex-soldier, and they mention that, and he proves that in everything he does. He is
actually he doesn't, because he disobeys orders. Isn't that something that soldiers don't do?
So disobeying unlawful orders is something that soldiers are ordered to do. And in the case of Brian, you can see that he is tired of following orders when those orders are going to get people killed. And this is a common theme in the military, is people are given orders to stand down. And if that's the case, is, oh, if I stand down and I risk a court-martial, but if I actually do what I know I'm supposed to do and I save somebody's lives, a true soldier will violate orders and face the consequences, because their actions is going to save. And actually, if you look at Medal of Honor recipients, nearly every Medal of Honor recipient violated direct orders in order to go above and beyond the call of duty. There are soldiers, like airmen who receive the Medal of Honor. They were told to stand down or return, and they ignored those orders, ran back into combat, and pulled their dang it. Sorry. They pulled back their fellow soldiers in arms out of enemy fire, and they died from it, but they saved, dang it. Those are heroic actions that are respected in the military. This is the best of the best, are the people who defy orders in order to save lives.
You're right, Tim. What was that?
That was me choking up, because I know there are tons of stories that you hear about Medal of Honor recipients when you're in the Air Force and you're going through training. And I am remembering those, and it still hits. Like, it's been, I left the Air Force in 2013, and I still got choked up there. Sorry about that.
Understandable. No, you're good, man. It's all good.
No. Those are the exemplary soldiers, are the ones who defied orders in order to save lives. So while it is a soldier's duty to obey orders, there's the understanding intent of sometimes orders are given for the wrong reasons. And when they are given for the wrong reasons, somebody with an actual moral conscience will ignore those orders for in order to do something for the good.
Okay.
And something.
What's Braxton's character? Or Braxton? Wait.
You did it. You did it. You did it.
It's Braxwell.
Fuck.
Yeah.
What's his
So
character? And you can't say black. You can't say mute.
So the strong silent type is not a type. That's not a character.
No, you got to describe. This is a fun exercise. You got to describe his character, but you can't use black or mute.
But
Come on, man. This is 90 pages. You should have more of a character than black and mute.
Not if he's the strong silent type.
What? You can absolutely have a strong silent type with more of a character than silent and black. Like,
you can, but you don't need to have more than that.
Yes, you do.
There are always characters of few words who show themselves by their actions. Okay, Braxwell is a reliable team member who gets things done. He doesn't need to be ordered around. He does things of his own accord, as we saw when he handled the, what's his name, Galvin, or...
Didn't they call him in? They called him in for that. He didn't handle it.
Yeah. No, so as far as he didn't just show up and wait for somebody to tell him what to do.
They called him in to fight the guy that is doing what you're told to do.
Okay, there's a big difference between being called to a scene and then waiting for instructions from a higher up, and being called to a scene, assessing the situation, and then taking action.
I really don't think that was an attempt at characterization there.
Okay, you can disagree. So he shows up, he takes care of business. Then when the ship is falling, nobody calls him. Did they call him in and be like, hey, guys, the headquarters
I'm pretty sure if your
Braxwell come
base
in
was, falling to the ground, you don't need to be told to save it.
Okay, but he didn't have to. He could have said,
What?
I'm not strong enough. He as you saw him pushing the aircraft up, obviously it was too heavy for them to hold. They were not going to actually, significantly slow it down to the point where it wouldn't impact, and yet that's where he was. He was doing everything
he probably
could.
didn't know that when he went to it. He probably didn't know that when he went to it. It seems like him and Ryan were trying.
What do you mean he probably didn't know that? It's a fucking helicopter.
Yeah, and they're superheroes. They can't Superman bench press a planet.
Superman can. Can Braxwell?
Yeah, but we don't have a frame of reference.
Braxwell would know the extent of his strength. And Brian agrees, we're not going to...
This is such a weak argument, man. Just like everything is just like this weak hand-waving of any criticism of like, well, no, actually, their characterization is they knew they wouldn't be able to lift it. I don't think that's the case. We have no frame of reference for what their strength is other than punching people. Also, this is fun. What's the difference between Braxwell and Brian Solari's powers?
Okay. I don't know if we can do this, but we're damn sure going to try. That's what Brian says as they're both teaming up together to try to lift it.
We can do this, but we're going to try. Okay, that seems like typical hero stuff.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what's your point?
So does that mean he's certain? Oh, I can definitely lift that. Is that? No, that's what I'm saying. Is they both show up and they're doing.
I never said that. You're just making up shit that I say. This entire 3-hour debate has been you making up shit that I say and then arguing against it.
Your point was that Braxwell knew his full strength.
No, I didn't. I didn't say that.
Okay.
You said that he knew he wouldn't be able to lift it. And I said, how do you know that? He might have seen it fallen, have no idea whether he could do it or not, but wanted to try. You're literally arguing your own
rephrasing of a situation.
You're literally arguing against your own point.
I am saying they know it's impossible for the two of them or even one of them to lift it up. But that's not even
what they say. They say, well, I don't know if this is possible, but we got to try, which is like actually almost exactly what I said. This is so dumb.
Okay.
Tim,
so
what is the compulsion to like defend these choices with things that aren't even in the book? You constantly call
my compulsion is to the truth, and as far as I can tell,
it's
you are not being accurate to what is in the book and what they are depicting in the book. They're showing that Braxwell is a team player. But he can't be silent and he can't be black. Oh, okay. So
I didn't say he can't be. I said describe his personality outside of being.
I don't know his personality because he is not. He's the stoic type. There are plenty of stoic figures who don't say anything. This is a common character
type. What's the difference between his powers and Brian Solari's?
I have no idea.
What do you mean?
They both fly. They're both strong. It appears that Brian is stronger than Braxwell, but we have no real comparison.
They couldn't come up with anything more interesting than two flying bricks? Do you not see how that's boring for a reader?
We don't know the full extent of their powers. As far as we know, or at least Brian is being depicted as kind of a Superman-esque type hero, so maybe he has laser vision and Braxwell doesn't.
Don't you think that would have been interesting to have to differentiate the two?
So what you're doing right now is perfection is the enemy of the good. So you're saying
no, it's not because perfect, this isn't good to begin with.
Yeah, it can't be good unless it's perfect. Even though there are
good is good, bad is bad, and boring is boring, Tim.
Okay, so have you seen Heroes? Or not Heroes, The Boys?
No.
Okay. Because there's Homelander, and then there's other characters that also fly and are strong. And
but doesn't Homelander have a laser vision?
Yeah.
They show that.
Yeah. Not in the first episode, not in several episodes. It's much later on. They show several characters flying and being strong. Like Maeve is indistinguishable from Homelander until Homelander reveals he's got his laser eyes. As far as their power set, like the only difference is, so she's the woman version.
Okay.
But apparently that's The Boys is terrible, or at least the TV show. I haven't read the comics. I hear their comics are not as good, but
I can't make a judgment on The Boys.
Yeah,
because I haven't seen it. And if I saw it,
based on your recommendation, I should be out there buying a ton of comic books right now because I was impressed by Alpha Core, and that's only a 3. There should be. I mean, I should be able to just go to any comic book shop.
What sequitur point is this?
No,
man?
I should be able to go to any.
If you buy my comic.
If Alpha Core is a 3,
check out Jared's comic. If
Alpha Core is a 3,
soon-ish,
then I should be able to go to any comic book shop and just start grabbing comics off the shelf and find tons of 7s and 8s they're way better.
You will find better comics than Alpha Core at a comic shop. Yes, that's not even a debate.
No, not will I find. I should find a ton of them because a 3 is really low. The average is 5. That's how averages work, unless you have some kind of.
I'm not actually basing it off an average because
a regular review score.
You could how do I say this with food?
A regular review score from 1 to 10, 5 would be
you
average.
You have a shit ton of bad restaurants around you, and one good restaurant that's 3 Michelin stars. That doesn't mean the average of the bad restaurants is 5. And no, it means
if there are 1,000 restaurants and one has a 10. You will never get to an average of 5 if the rest are 3s and 4s.
Dude, I'm not talking literally about the math.
The only way to get to an average of 5 is if most comic books are a 5. And what you're saying is I should be able to go to any comic book store.
I didn't say that 5
and most of the comic books I find will be much better than Alpha Core. That is the general consensus.
Are you a math guy? Are you really into math?
Yes.
I can tell.
I'm a computer programmer. Everything I do is math.
No shame in that.
4.0.
I'm not judging these on a mathematical scale.
Yeah, so you are applying numbers that don't mean anything to anybody other than you.
You know what?
You're saying it's a 1 for Isom. So if Isom is
I'm gonna say instead Alpha Core is a D. I would rate it a D.
Still bad.
No numbers around.
That means I should be able to go to a comic book store, grab random comics. And unless I happen to find the 10 or 20% comics that are worse than Alpha Core and Isom, I shouldn't be able to find anything worse than Isom. Isom is a 1. I should be able to grab just random comics, and all of them should be at least a 5. So
what? All of them should be at least a 5? That's not even how an average works.
So if there are 10 comics,
what is this?
Isom is a 1. And the average is 5. The majority of comics in a comic book shop
is 5.
That's how averages work.
But I'm not
on a scale from 1 to 10. I don't know what your scale is because apparently your scale has negative numbers and bullshit. That doesn't make any sense. So from negative infinity to positive 10, a 1 is much better than average.
Get it right. It's positive infinity to negative infinity.
Okay,
Tim, do you understand humor? I'm not trying to be like an asshole. Do you actually understand humor?
So out of the comics you mentioned, the best.
Do you
of the best was
understand
like
the concept of humor, Tim?
Fuck you, dude. Holy shit.
Fuck me. Fuck you. You're the one who came on here essentially accusing me of lying when I didn't fucking lie. You lied to yourself. You made a fool out of yourself here. This is fucking embarrassing. I
don't understand fucking humor. Nope, I have never fucking told a joke in my entire life.
When I jokingly gave it a score and you spurred out about it. That's fucking embarrassing. You're probably twice my age and acting a fool.
Really?
Yeah. This is sad.
No, you're 52. How am I 104? Oh shit, I have no fucking concept of humor. How did I just fucking do that? What did I just do? I made a fuck you, dude.
Yeah. Fuck you too.
Yeah, you're just a fucking troll. Nothing you say is
I'm
accurate.
a
or true.
troll?
Yeah. Everything
How?
you say no, nothing you
How?
said is accurate or what you actually believe.
It is. It literally all is.
How can anybody rely on you? Your picture's not really
How
you.
can anyone rely on you?
You
You're the
talked
one who
about you
spent
being
30
52. You say
minutes
your scale is
lying
from
because you
positive
didn't want to
infinity
admit
to negative
you
infinity,
pirated
which means
fucking
that Isom is a
cyberfraud.
1. If positive infinity to negative infinity, that
This-
means 0
this
is the
is-
average.
this is so
0
funny.
is the average, and therefore Isom is 1 greater than the average. Holy fuck, it's like you don't understand numbers.
I'm sorry.
So by
Yes.
comparison,
Isom
Isom is better
one
than most,
point.
and it is not terrible. It is above average. Huh. It's almost like that's where I put it.
Yeah. One
So the conclusion is that you guys agree?
Apparently,
Cool.
because
I'm
his middle
imagining-
ground
I'm
is a
imagining Tim in
0.
front of a whiteboard chalkboard writing out the equation of Isom.
And it's like, okay, you gave it a 6, I gave it a 7.5. That's close enough. But yeah, for some reason that makes it terrible. And then apparently that means that there are
I gave it a
the
6.
Moon Knight run is apparently an 8, which means I have to get out there and I have to buy like 2 or 3 copies of that because I spent 35 on Alpha Core or
if
maybe
you
not
like
35.
Moon Knight.
Yeah.
If you like Moon Knight and Vigilante.
But if it's an 8, I mean, it's way better than Alpha Core. And I thought Alpha Core was fantastic.
Actually, come to think of it, Moon Knight is a neo-noir comic.
Yeah.
That run is a neo-noir.
Yeah.
You should
Like,
check it out.
I was not a big fan of the TV show, but the character is interesting.
Oh, the TV show butchered it.
Yeah.
It
I mean,
didn't look good
I
to
like
me,
I like
yeah.
the actor, but that show did not do
The
justice.
actor was miscast. He is not like Mark Spector.
Nah, that seemed weird. Yeah.
No,
I think
he's a
cool
good actor,
but
just
didn't
not the
seem
role
weird.
for
He seemed
him.
weird
But in
casting, yeah.
the TV show is butchered, and but it's an interesting concept, and I like one of my favorite TV shows is Legion. Like, again, not all 3 seasons of it are really good, but man, I think they captured the essence of the comics and they delivered a really good show, and it's a
Do you like
combination
multiple
of a whole bunch-
personality disorder stuff?
Oh yeah, so
Do you
they
have that? Are we talking?
do I
Which
have
Tim
that?
are we talking to?
do I no
He's just fucking around, dude.
I'm a troll after
Yeah.
all, right?
yeah. Why would you even suggest that just because I like a show? Like,
He
does
didn't
anybody who
seriously
likes
suggest that? He was just,
do you like anybody who likes Hannibal as a they must be a serial killer.
Oh my god, you're a serial killer. Maybe you're like the
Anybody
guy
who
from
likes
Split.
Dexter, the super popular show on Showtime, man, they're secretly serial killers. Like, yeah, that's fucking.
well,
retarded.
if they have the same morals as Dexter, I'm okay with that. They just kill murderers and pedophiles. That's cool.
Yeah, so you throw out blatant accusations that have no
He
basis
wasn't
in reality.
serious, man. He wasn't serious.
Come on, man.
Because yeah, so he can be an epic
How
troll
are you
and
in the
just
military?
nothing.
Did no one bust your balls in the military?
No, you could make a
Like-
joke about that too if you want to,
No,
man.
yeah.
It's all good. We're all good.
No, I'm
here.
saying
is
I'm
it?
supposed to take him as seriously on all these other things when he hasn't taken anything so far serious. His scale is
Why would I take it
incomprehensible.
seriously? It's a fucking comic book. Why would I be taking any of this seriously?
Why the fuck are you on this debate then?
To give Jared some content.
I guess.
Well,
I'm helping a brother out.
Yeah.
well, he has wanted to debate people about Isom, and
But it's not a
and
debate if he doesn't actually believe what he says.
as
What?
far as I'm aware, from my conversations with him in private, he
No,
believes
through-
everything he said
throughout the-
about Isom.
Throughout the whole thing, he's been nothing but a troll. None of his reviews are
You realize
reliable.
you can make an argument while also making jokes to make the argument entertaining.
Oh no, I
That's-
don't realize that at all.
I really-
never crossed my mind. It's impossible. It's not something I do all the time.
Wait, is it something you? Is it? Have we been missing? Have we been missing out?
Fucking hell, dude. You are impossible. So when we're talking about a debate, it should
Actually,
be obvious.
mathematically, I'm not impossible. I am not a 1/0. I'm not a 1/0, Tim.
No, you are
You know-
impossible to
you know my
understand because
final rating?
you don't make a clear
You wanna
distinction
know my
between when
final
you're being
rating for
serious and when
Isom?
you are being a
A
troll.
1/0. That's my final rating for Isom.
A 1 out of 0.
Irrational.
All right, dude, that is fucking amazing.
It's certainly unique.
That's a great score because you could fit an infinite number of zeros in a 1.
No, you've actually. It sounds like you changed his mind, Tim.
Yeah, I mean that's a great score.
All right. Well, I don't know. I don't know where else we could really go with this.
No,
Unless you guys.
Yeah,
It's been
fun.
3 hours. I've enjoyed this. I hope that you guys both have too. I don't know if there's anything else to really cover as far as Isom or Alpha Core or anything. But I would love to.
I do have
you
one
on
last
again.
question.
Tim, if you'd like to come on again, go ahead, Sam.
Tim, how would you feel if you did not have breakfast this morning?
I don't eat breakfast.
Yes, but how would you feel if you did have breakfast?
The same as I do. Why? It doesn't make a difference.
I actually do have a question.
Okay.
Because I asked this of Alvin too, and I think that you'd be able to give a more robust answer, Tim. Because when we were wrapping up, I asked Alvin as a fan, like what would need to happen in Isom 3, or what failure could happen for him to like not think that it was like a good book. Because I asked Sam, like, what would need to happen for you to think it is a good book and for it to be a good series? So what would need to be absent for you to be disappointed, I guess?
Okay, for me first and then Sam?
Yeah.
So for me, the overall arc, the ill-advised arc, and this is not the complete explanation of everything Isom or Avery/Isom does.
Sure.
But what needs to be finalized in order for that arc to be a complete arc, for it to have a resolution. And again, we didn't cover Isom 2 all that much, but for Isom 3 to fulfill the expectation as laid out in the previous 2 books, is he has to confront Darren and in some way stop his operation from doing, it may not completely disable his operation, but whatever is currently going on with Jasmine, that part of the operation needs to be stopped. If he doesn't succeed in stopping that, then there is no resolution. If it ends on a cliffhanger, then that's not a complete arc. If it's, it needs to have a resolution where, oh, you may not have beaten Darren, but at least you stopped him from fulfilling what he needed to do. Now, whether that means, if Jasmine is working with Darren, that probably means she's going to end up dying or something along the lines, because without her, then that would stop whatever he's currently doing. If she is, working against his will, like being held hostage and forced to do something, then that would mean rescuing her from whatever Darren is doing. And like I said before, I expect there to be a pretty big skirmish, whether that means, just Isom by himself versus, Darren and his entire organization, or maybe Isom having some backup and it being a team of Accepts versus whatever Darren has.
But if there's not a skirmish,
there needs to be some kind of skirmish. It can't just be like, ha, I called the cops on you and they finally did the job and it's like, dude, that's such a lame. It's got to be something.
If he doesn't resolve the arc, that would be disappointing to you. But it's like, as far as how he resolves it, that's not as important as long as it's resolved.
It needs to be resolved, and Avery needs to be instrumental for that resolution. Whether that means, and more than likely, it needs to be a physical confrontation. So, like with noirs, usually this means a shootout. Like a LA Confidential was fantastic, slow burn right up until the end, and then there's epic shootout between the 2 cops versus all the corrupt cops. Something like that. It's like, that's what needs to occur. It needs to be. And it needs to, in order to be a actual conclusion, it does need to be larger than what the Hell Cave was, because that can't. If that was the biggest part of the whole arc, then it's kind of like, it's like, okay, it's like a roller coaster. You went all to the top, you came down on this big loop, and then there's a little small loop at the end. You're like, wow,
it ends by going back up a hill,
like a little hill, and you're like, okay, that was anticlimactic. It needs to be, it needs to be bigger. And maybe not much bigger, but it needs to be at least at that same height and slightly bigger. And he does need, it can't be one of those stories that would have resolved itself without his interaction. That's one of the worst forms of, even the one exception to that is the Ark of the Covenant. But most other times where the hero had no actual impact on the story, it's terrible. Okay. Like the Ark of the Covenant is the only one I can remember where it's like, okay, even though he didn't need to be there, it was still entertaining. Rest of the time, It's
it
pretty
doesn't
bad.
really resolve itself without Indiana Jones. He's the only
Really?
reason they find the Ark in the first place.
Well, because they were digging in the wrong spot,
Yeah.
so he helped them rather than stop them.
Yeah.
Well, you have to think if he
But-
wasn't there at least at the end too, then it just would have stayed there, and that never would have gone to that big U.S. warehouse because just all the dead Nazis would have just been there, you know. So,
Yeah.
although I don't know how he got untied, I do kind of wonder about that.
Shh, don't worry about that.
Yeah, don't worry about that.
Well, clearly one of the angels did it.
Yeah, one
Maybe
of the
they
demon
became
angels with
Norfolk.
the scary faces.
And
Yeah.
I think Sam answered that on the previous stream, but
Yeah, he did. But it's Sam.
No,
I
I
guess the
got a
only
new
thing that's
answer.
changed,
I got
you've
a
read
new
Alpha
answer.
Core now. So has anything changed as far as what you need to see from Isom 3?
Yes. So what I really want to see that would make the arc complete, in my opinion, is for one, I want Larry Shungite to be cracking a whip while Avery has to point to Florida on a map. And then I want Norfolka looking straight at the reader and saying, "We're angels and or aliens."
Okay.
And then I want Yaira to go to the hairdresser and ask for the sometimes blue hair tie. And that's what I want from Isom
right.
3. If it does those three things, 10 out of 10. I think I got everything to say.
okay.
Well, we'll see if that happens, I guess. So stay tuned for Isom 3.
Man.
All right. Well, I'll go ahead and end it there, and thank you, gentlemen, both again for your time. Again, I have enjoyed it, and I hope to see you in the comments in the future, Tim and Sam. Thank you as always for coming on, and I think the world of you guys for coming on. I really appreciate it. I hope you have had an excellent night, and thank you again.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
You've given
Take
this
care, guys.
poor Indian man such a good opportunity.
Well, I'm all about sharing the love.
Man.